Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
However, when it came to his turn, Elder Zoomer couldn't help but be overwhelmed with anger. After all, if he couldn't seal the existence under Cage Island, losing his life would be a major matter, compared to the destruction of the breezy plains. However, at this moment, after Lin Li repaired his domain world, a strange sight appeared in it. There seemed to be something trapped in his domain world like a bug in a glass bottle, charging everywhere in a seemingly unobstructed space. If one looked closely, they would be able to vaguely see a Wyrm's shadow. Indeed, the shadow was Lin Li's current enemy, Antora, which was known as the Death Shadow. Unable to break Lin Li's domain world, the Death Shadow Antora finally couldn't hold back any longer, and it simply sneaked into Lin Li's domain world through the gap in a bid to give Lin Li a hard time in this domain world. Unfortunately, just as Antora sneaked into Lin Li's domain world, Lin Li integrated the 7 pieces of the debris of the stars with the domain world, instantly maximizing the nomological power of the domain world. At the same time, the power of the 7 pieces of the debris of the stars immediately cordoned off the space that Antora was in. That was not coincidental at all. In fact, it had all been part of Lin Li's plan right from the beginning. Lin Li's intention had been to lure Antora's true body into his own domain world. Since Lin Li and Antora were about the same level, it was not an easy task to break Antora's world of darkness. Hence, the best thing to do was to let Antora come out on his own, and create an environment which restricted darkness. Nothing would be more suitable than a domain world of another sanctuary powerhouse. When it came to restricting the domain world of a sanctuary powerhouse, Lin Li first used the World Sword to show Antora that they were evenly matched in strength, and it was considered a type of challenge, or rather provocation. At the same time, under the siege of the Black Giants, he pretended to be struggling to sustain the attacks, but he often managed to pull through, which angered Antora even more. After all, Antora had already lost himself now, and was just a ghost that was acting according to his instincts without much consideration at all. He saw that the opponent who provoked him pulled through time and time again despite being on the verge of collapsing and simply lacking the last straw. Driven by anger, he dived into Lin Li's domain world through the crack in a bid to annihilate his enemy as soon as possible. However, how could Antora have expected that Lin Li still possessed 7 powerful pieces of the debris of the stars which were completely capable of bringing his domain world to a higher level? Hence, Antora was captured by Lin Li with the power of the 7 pieces of the debris of the stars right after it invaded the domain world. After capturing Antora, Lin Li raised the Helios scepter and chanted a quick incantation under his breath. As he did so, his domain world also began to change rapidly. Everything in the domain world began to emit a sacred light that caused the entire domain world to become a world filled with holy aura. If Pope Rosario of the Brilliant Shrine had been there, he would have recognized Lin Li's domain world at this juncture to be the Holy Haven, which was the highest realm of holy light magic. In the entire Brilliant Shrine, only the Pope, who was known as the spokesman of holy light, could create the Holy Haven. It was a world full of light that was not too glaring but emitted a pure holy aura. Everything in the world was bathed in the light that made it seem incredibly sacred. Anyone would quickly develop a faith in holy light and become a true believer of light once they were in this world. Of course, Antora wouldn't have the opportunity to become a believer of light because it possessed a world of darkness and was also a ghost that had the identity of an undead creature. The Holy Haven was not heaven, but hell for him. It was a place where all filth and evilness could be purified by holy light, and his only fate would be to completely disappear from this world. Antora roared and struggled, but was never able to escape from Lin Li's Holy Haven. The powerful purification power kept baptizing his body and disintegrating the rules of undead and darkness in his body. Antora's body was now burning with holy heavenly flames, and its huge body was also rapidly shrinking while the world of darkness burned up as soon as it appeared. Is he from the Brilliant Shrine? Elder Zoomer was once again dumbfounded as the battle in the sky was just too unexpected. He could never believe that the president of the Breezy Plains Guild of Magic would actually cast the Holy Haven, which only the Pope of Brilliant Shrine could cast. With the help of the debris of the stars, holy light, the Holy Haven that Lin Li cast was probably not much inferior to that of Pope Rosario. Under such strong purification, Antora was soon burned down to nothing by the heavenly purification flames. After getting rid of Antora, the battle on Cage Island became one-sided as the remaining Wyrm ghosts could not cause any problems for Lin Li. It only took a short time for the Wyrm ghosts to be wiped out completely. Elder Zoomer and the others were the only ones left now. As long as they could reinforce the seal, the matter would come to an end. In order to let the people of the Gilded Kingdom complete their task successfully, Lin Li didn't slack off at the side. Instead, he got Elvis and the others to help suppress the force from below Cage Island. Perhaps because of the release of Ontora and the numerous Wyrm ghosts that consumed too much power, or because of the effect of Lin Li's suppression, the existence that was sealed under Cage Island seemed to have also resigned to fate as they quieted down. Under such circumstances, the environment of Cage Island was no longer as frightening as before. The mages of the Gilded Kingdom took advantage of this rare opportunity and sped up the repair of the alchemy array. It took them only a few minutes to reactivate the entire alchemy array. Looking at the light emanating from the alchemy array, Zoomer finally let out a long sigh of relief. Although he knew that Cantori had to have promised Lin Li and the others handsome benefits when requesting for their help, all the effort would be worth it as long as this task could be successfully completed. However, just when everyone thought that everything was alright, Lin Li, who had been staying in mid-air, had a somewhat strange expression on his face. Although Lin Li couldn't pinpoint exactly the reason for that feeling, he just felt that something was amiss. Lin Li would never ignore his premonitions, because that gut feel was what allowed him to get out of danger time and time again during all his close shaves with death. At the thought of this, he carefully observed Cage Island before fixing his gaze on the alchemy array arranged by the Gilded Kingdom. He originally did not feel anything, but the more he looked at it, the more strange it seemed to him. All of a sudden, Lin Li's eyes lit up as if he understood something, and he immediately yelled, "Hurry up, stop your alchemy array." Lin Li's words made the people of the Gilded Kingdom a bit baffled, and even Elvis and the others couldn't understand what was going on. Elder Zoomer thought that Lin Li had guessed the purpose of his trip, and couldn't help but frown slightly as he looked up, and said to Lin Li, who was in midair, "President Flick, thank you very much for your assistance this time, but please leave it to us to handle the aftermath." "Damn it, stop the array, hurry up, you can't reinforce the seal like that," Lin Li yelled in infuriation. The thing sealed beneath Cage Island was already horrifying enough when it revealed some of its power. There would be huge trouble if it really escaped. However, at this juncture, the entire Cage Island suddenly began to shake violently again. It even seemed to be more vigorous than before, as if the island was about to be overturned. This time, Elder Zoomer finally panicked and yelled to his subordinate mages, "Did you guys do something wrong?" However, before the mages could answer, Cage Island was split up in the middle, and the surrounding sea water immediately poured into the crack. The mages who originally stood in various positions in the alchemy array were immediately moved everywhere, and some unlucky mages even fell directly into the huge crack. While everyone on the island was in chaos, a huge black figure flew out of the crack, and an extremely terrifying aura immediately enveloped the entire sea. Staring at the huge black figure flying out of the crack, Lin Li's pupils constricted, and he saw a black Wyrm, or rather a black dragon's corpse. He could see the internal organs of the Wyrm from the hole in its chest. At this moment, Lin Li also finally confirmed the suspicion in his heart. The aura that seemed familiar to him was from the black dragon corpse in front of him. The aura felt familiar because the black dragon was Azardus, the dragon of destruction, which he had shot and killed in the endless world. How could the corpse of Azardus, the dragon of destruction, appear here? That was the first question that came to Lin Li's mind, because he had found out from Nifa, a descendant of the dragon of destruction, and Rog, a high priest of the darkness shrine, that Azardus seemed to have been buried under the Blackstone Mountains after being killed by the immortal king, and was guarded by another descendant, Tutankhamun. What is going on? Since the corpse of Azardus, the dragon of destruction, is here, what is Tutankhamun guarding? Lin Li felt that there seemed to be no need for Nifa to lie to him. If he had known that the corpse of the dragon of destruction was there, he would have gone there long ago to dig the corpse out. However, the dragon corpse in front of him was not quite the same as the one in his memory. There did not seem to be a trace of destruction or evilness on the body, and all he could sense was a massive magical wave that was at least at the peak of the sanctuary realm. A corpse alone could possess power that was at the peak of the sanctuary realm. What level would it be when it was alive, then? When Lin Li first killed the dragon of destruction in the endless world, he didn't have a clear feeling of it. After all, the endless world was just a game. However, legend had it that Azardus, the dragon of destruction, who was also one of the 5 dragon aspects, possessed strength that was at the level of the gods. In that case, Azardus' strength had to have been beyond the peak of the sanctuary realm, and was close to the gods. Perhaps he might even be in existence with a god's position. In fact, Lin Li did feel a wisp of aura that did not seem to belong to the peak of the sanctuary realm from the corpse of the dragon, as it was rather majestic, and gave off a might that would have no tolerance for blasphemy. Although it was extremely subtle, it would still affect one's soul. Of course, the influence was not great. Otherwise, the people present, including Lin Li and Elder Zoomer, who were high-level sanctuary powerhouses, would have to immediately run as far as possible, since it was the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction that was sealed there. Kantori obviously didn't tell the truth when he'd said that his ancestors had found the map in the ruins of the Titans. That was obviously made up according to the original legend of the Breezy Plains. The most important thing now was to deal with the corpse of the dragon. There would be plenty of chances for him to settle scores with the Gilded Kingdom. Lin Li had a good understanding and experience of the strength and power of the Dragon of Destruction, not to mention the legends that he had heard in Anral. He had paid a huge price to kill the Dragon of Destruction in the Endless World. At that time, he had had the 7 pieces of the debris of the stars and the stars of fury. However, he'd only managed to painstakingly kill the Dragon of Destruction by exerting the full power of the debris of the stars with the help of the stars of fury. However, Lin Li now had 7 pieces of the debris of the stars, but he still didn't know where the stars of fury was. Fortunately, it was also a dragon corpse, and although it was still incredibly strong, there was still a huge difference between the corpse and when it was alive. Besides, Lin Li also noticed that the huge wound on the chest of this dragon corpse was where the magical crystal should be. However, the wound could now be seen clearly, but there was no longer a trace of the magical crystal. There was only flesh, blood, and some of its bones. Without the magical crystal, its strength would be greatly reduced. Hence, the dragon corpse only had power that was at the peak of the sanctuary realm. There seemed to be no need to guess the whereabouts of the magical crystal, and they reckoned that 80% of them had been unearthed and taken away by the Immortal King. It was said that Tutankhamun and Nefa were hatched by the Immortal King using the magical crystal of the Dragon of Destruction. Anyway, they had already admitted it, and thus Lin Li could not judge if it was true or not. There had been many legends about the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction in Anral, such as about the sky castle that the Immortal King had created with the Dragon of Destruction's corpse, and the sun in Osric's mausoleum that High Lord Osric had made using the eyes of the Dragon of Destruction. However, the vast majority of those legends were only conjectures. Although they seemed reasonable, all the legends were exposed once the dragon's corpse appeared. Although there was a complete Dragon of Destruction corpse in Lin Li's Ring of Endless Storm, he felt that he hadn't seen it in a long time when he saw a moving corpse. Of course, Lin Li didn't really mind it. There was nothing he could say about a moving dragon corpse. The dragon corpse in front of him looked like a mountain that was hovering in midair with a pair of wide fleshy wings slowly flapping on its back, causing large waves to form on the surface of the sea. In addition to the large hole in the chest, the dragon corpse still seemed rather intact. It seemed that the Immortal King was not the type to be abused. In fact, the scales on the dragon corpse were unscathed too. Besides, they were still shining with a black light. However, there was something that confused Lin Li. What exactly the Immortal King wanted to do? How could he have casually tossed the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction around? The dragon corpse in Lin Li's own ring was cherished by him, yet the Immortal King threw such a precious material away. The difference was just too great. Of course, perhaps the Immortal King did not just throw it away casually, and was instead leaving the corpse there for some purpose. After all, the dragon's corpse was sealed below Cage Island. However, given the Immortal King's abilities, he would probably be able to seal the corpse well, and not let it escape so easily. Did someone else seal it, then? The ancestor of Gilded Kingdom seemed to be a greater suspect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the map for his descendants and told them to reinforce the seal. If that was the case, there would be another problem. It was the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction, which was unique in the world of Anral and could be considered a priceless treasure. If the Immortal King had left it there, and it was discovered by the ancestor of the Gilded Kingdom, why didn't he take it away at that time instead of sealing it there? Could it be that sealing it here would bring them more benefits than using the corpse for creating other precious things? The appearance of the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction planted many doubts in Lin Li's head. However, the moving dragon corpse obviously did not intend to give Lin Li time to consider those questions. After the dragon corpse flew up, it opened its large mouth without any warning and spurted a mouthful of dragon breath at Lin Li and the others while roaring at the same time. Due to the massive size of the Dragon of Destruction, its mouthful of dragon breath shrouded almost half of Cage Island. Fortunately, Lin Li did not let down his guard in the first place. As soon as he saw the dragon corpse opening its mouth, he immediately launched the space robe and dodged. However, Elder Zoomer was in an unfortunate state, because there were still a lot of subordinates whom he had to manage. Seeing the dragon breath swarming towards them, he hurriedly gathered his subordinates before dodging as well. However, there were still some people from the Gilded Kingdom who didn't have time to return to Elder Zoomer's side, because they were shocked by the dragon corpse's power in the beginning. Their defense against the dragon breath was almost useless, and they were turned into ashes by the dragon breath before they could even scream. Seeing this scene, Elder Zoomer was incredibly distressed. They were all elites of the Illuminati, who had not suffered any injuries along the way. He hadn't expected them to die so worthlessly. However, the current situation gave him no room or time for taking pity on the casualties, because he had to consider the living subordinates in his oceanic world. President Felix, these people will only be dragging us down by staying here. Help me hold that dragon corpse back, and I'll send them away immediately. Elder Zoomer could no longer care about his pride as he immediately asked Lin Li for help. What a joke. If I hold the dragon corpse back, who knows if you might just bring your people along and flee. Lin Li was not projecting his shortcomings on them. It was a world where interests reigned supreme. In a life and death situation as this, it would not be surprising for one to make that choice. Elder Zoomer, do you think I can hold off this big corpse all by myself? I think you should let someone else help you send those subordinates away while you stay here with me. I think we'd be able to hold it back for a while and buy some time. Lin Li did not leave them completely in the lurch, and instead made such a different suggestion. No matter what, he wouldn't let Elder Zoomer leave him behind alone. Okay, we will follow your arrangement, President Felix. Elder Zoomer was a smart person, who immediately figured out what Lin Li was worried about. Although he was very uncomfortable, he didn't reveal it. After all, when he saw Lin Li evading just now, he knew that Lin Li could leave any time. Hence, he knew that it wouldn't be wise to anger him at this juncture. Seeing that Elder Zoomer was smart enough to do the right thing, Lin Li did not deliberately make things harder for him. Instead, he called the two pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses, Cardson and Gaetana, to take the peak legendary powerhouses in their teams and escort Elder Zoomer's subordinates away from the battlefield. His main reason for doing so was because the two of them were the weakest among the 6 pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses, and he felt that it would be better to let them escort the people of the Gilded Kingdom away before coming back. That would allow them to suffer a smaller impact after they returned. Although Elder Zoomer was not very trusting of the abilities of Cardson and Gaetana, he didn't have a choice now. He could only hand over his subordinates, who were protected in his domain for the sake of their safety. After doing so, he did not dare to delay for a moment, and immediately flew towards Lin Li, acting as if he was ready to fight alongside him. However, with another mouthful of dragon breath from the dragon corpse, Lin Li and Elder Zoomer immediately went separate ways. After all, that was the dragon breath of the dragon of destruction. Even if they were high-level sanctuary powerhouses, they wouldn't dare fight hard against it with their own defense. Perhaps because it had sensed that a large amount of vitality was leaving Cage Island, the dragon corpse simply did not bother about the two seemingly stronger enemies, and instead flapped its wings and dashed towards the fleeing crowd of the Gilded Kingdom like a sharp arrow. Elder Zoomer panicked. He didn't think that Cardson and Gaetana would be strong enough to withstand the attack of the dragon corpse. Besides, during times of an emergency, those two would definitely not hesitate to leave the others and then escape. He couldn't blame them either. After all, they were in the sanctuary realm, and it was only right for them not to want to risk their lives for ordinary people. Seeing that the dragon corpse chased after them, Elder Zoomer dared not delay further as he hurriedly pointed the staff in his hand forward, and then a variety of water and ice magic spells blasted over. Although the dragon corpse was not slow, a large ice blue patch appeared on the black, shiny back of the dragon corpse. Elder Zoomer's magic bombardment had indeed attracted the attention of the dragon corpse, but what made people feel alarmed was that the magic spells just now didn't really cause the slightest damage to the corpse. The ice blue patch on the back of the dragon corpse was shaken off with the movement of the dragon corpse, while the original target location of the magic bombardment was still lustrous. However, despite not being hurt, the dragon corpse also targeted Elder Zoomer. After all, it wasn't that easy to challenge the might of a wyrm, let alone the corpse of the dragon of destruction, which was once one of the 5 dragon aspect. As it roared hoarsely, its wings flapped twice, and its large mountain-like body zoomed towards Elder Zoomer in an instant. The dragon corpse did not spit any dragon breath, either. Instead, it reached its large claws out towards Elder Zoomer. Right from the beginning, Elder Zoomer did not neglect his defense, and his body was shrouded by his oceanic domain world. Despite being a high-level sanctuary powerhouse, Elder Zoomer's domain world nonetheless burst like a bubble at the instant that he was scratched by the dragon's claws, which contained terrifying power. The power was far stronger than before. Even though the claws did not contain the slightest amount of nomological power, they still had the power to destroy the world. After his domain world was scratched and destroyed, Elder Zoomer couldn't recover from the shock for a while even though he was a high-level sanctuary powerhouse. Besides, the massive claws seemed to have the power to cover the sky as they instantly cast a shadow over Elder Zoomer. In the face of this development, Elder Zoomer did not panic. Instead, he raised the staff in his hand while chanting the incantation, and as light shot out from the gem at the top of the staff, Elder Zoomer's body crumbled with a loud bang, and turned into countless drops of water, before it was even moved. At a spot near the dragon corpse, countless water droplets suddenly emerged out of thin air, and immediately converged to form Elder Zoomer's body. However, as soon as a bit of Elder Zoomer's true appearance was revealed, the dragon corpse suddenly turned around and whipped Elder Zoomer with a whistling sound with its tail, which seemed powerful enough to flatten a mountain peak. As soon as Elder Zoomer managed to cast an ice wall, the dragon's tail already swept the ice wall and broke it before landing hard on Elder Zoomer's body. With a loud sound, Elder Zoomer's body was sent flying backwards, and his magic robe became tattered. After whipping Elder Zoomer, the dragon corpse began chasing him non-stop. At this moment, Elder Zoomer was almost too powerless to retaliate, and he couldn't defend either. It was almost right to say that he was waiting to die. Lin Li knew that he would be in trouble if he didn't take action. If he were the only one left, he definitely wouldn't be able to deal with the dragon corpse. Hence, Lin Li pointed the Helios scepter forward, and a large light and darkness sword instantly condensed. As soon as it did, it ruthlessly slashed at the massive body of the dragon corpse. The power of the light and darkness sword was no longer comparable to Lin Li's world swords, but its power was still amazing. The huge dragon corpse actually stumbled because of the sword. Of course, the scales of the dragon corpse were still perfectly intact after being slashed by the sword, but the incredibly solid light and darkness sword actually shattered immediately because of the impact. However, no matter what, Elder Zoomer managed to escape a disaster with Lin Li's help. At Zoomer's command, the muzzles of the cannons on the alchemical ships that still remained in the waters around Cage Island were pointed at the sky, and rays of cannon light darted out. The dragon corpse was simply too massive, so much so that the alchemical ships below need not aim too carefully at the target, and all they had to do was to aim in the right direction. The light of the mana cannons blasted at the dragon corpse. The light caused auras to form on the body of the dragon corpse, and the mana cannons that killed countless sea beasts and could even penetrate mountain peaks were actually useless when it came to attacking the corpse. There was not a single trace of injury on the neatly arranged dragon scales, and it was as if the light of the mana cannons were just used for illumination. The dragon corpse roared as it seemed to have been annoyed by the insignificant nobodies at the bottom. The alchemical battleships of the Gilded Kingdom might be the toughest battleships in Anral, but their movements were relatively slower on sea. Seeing the dragon breath crash down, the battleships that were about to be engulfed by it immediately put up defensive magic shields, while accelerating in another direction in a bid to rush out of the range covered by the dragon breath. However, there were still two battleships that did not escape and were enveloped by the dragon breath. The magical shields of the two battleships immediately burst like bubbles. Immediately afterwards, they sunk to the bottom of the sea, and a large depression formed in the surface of the sea after the dragon breath landed and eroded it. Water surged out of the sea, forming a massive vortex. When Elder Zoomer saw that scene, he was full of regret. The value of the two alchemical battleships was on par with that of those which had left. Although the Gilded Kingdom was known as the country of alchemical civilization, and rose to fame in Anral because of their alchemical battleships, building a battleship was not easy. Had he known how fragile the alchemical battleships were when faced with the dragon corpse, Elder Zoomer would have never let them stay there. However, those alchemical battleships did give Lin Li a chance to fight. When he saw a wound in the chest of the dragon corpse, Lin Li pointed his Helios scepter forward, and a huge light and darkness sword broke through the air, stabbing straight into the chest of the dragon corpse. In Lin Li's opinion, the body of the dragon corpse might be tough and highly resistant to magic spells, but the huge wound had penetrated deep into its internal organs, so as there were no scales to protect it. He might be able to blast the dragon corpse's stomach into ashes if he could pierce through this wound, and then trigger an explosion of light and darkness. In that case, its skin would be all that was left, and it probably would not be able to do anything major. Seeing Lin Li's approach, Elder Zoomer, Elvis, and the others were also inspired to cast their strongest magic spells at the chest of the dragon corpse, which now became their target. In a moment, the sky was filled with all kinds of magic spells, causing it to shine colorfully. The only target of the magic spells was the wound in front of the dragon corpse's chest. Boom, boom, boom. There were continuous sounds of explosions in the air, and the dragon corpse's chest glowed incessantly, almost drowning out half of the dragon's corpse. The intense magic bombardment that was jointly cast by the sanctuary powerhouses and peak legendary powerhouses was so powerful that it could even flatten a mountain range. However, when the magic light dissipated, the crowd found that the dragon corpse actually had a claw blocking its wound on its chest, though the edges were not blocked, and the traces of the bombardment could still be seen. Damn it, how are we supposed to fight like that? We can't make it budge at all. If we hit it once, we might have to die. At this moment, everyone including Lin Li felt powerless as the battle really made them feel helpless. Among all the people, Lin Li was probably the one with the highest number of trump cards, each of which would probably play a vital role in any other battle. However, While dealing with the dragon corpse's attack in this battle, Lin Li recalled the trump cards he had, and was helpless when he discovered that none of them could play a significant role. It was true that Lin Li had the debris of the stars, but in order to fully exert its power, he would still have to combine it with the stars of fury. Although Lin Li still had the crossbow of reincarnation, which could somewhat replace the stars of fury by replicating its effects, that was in the case of facing other enemies. Now that he was facing the corpse of the dragon of destruction as Ardis, he knew exactly how much the crossbow of reincarnation could do. Back in the endless world, Lin Li had fought with the debris of the stars, and although he managed to kill it in the end, the process was really like a nightmare. At that time, Lin Li had used the debris of the stars and the stars of fury, but he still found it difficult to kill the dragon. Hence, it could be said that Lin Li knew the defensive ability of the dragon corpse better than anyone else did. Even though they were just facing a dragon corpse now, the crossbow of reincarnation would not play a significant role at all. Since they could not break the defense of the dragon corpse, they had to think of another solution. The first thing that Lin Li thought of was to use necromagic. But was the dragon corpse an undead creature or not? It would be reasonable to say that the corpse was an undead creature since it had died, and yet could still move around freely like the living. However, Lin Li did not feel a trace of the aura of undead creatures from the dragon corpse. Besides, the dragon of destruction was one of the 5 dragon aspects and was a powerful existence with a deity's position. Even after its death, it was impossible for it to turn into an undead creature. So, if the dragon corpse wasn't an undead creature, what allowed it to move and fight? Lin Li considered for a moment, and decided to give it a try since there wasn't any other solution now anyway. He decided to regard it as a Hail Mary effort. After all, he had had the Dragon of Destruction's corpse for several years, but he didn't really know what that thing was supposed to belong to after it came to life. Attract its attention. Due to the fact that Lin Li had the highest attacking power among the crowd, he had managed to catch the dragon corpse's attention even though he too hadn't caused much damage to it. Lin Li decided to stop attacking now, and instead continuously activated the power of his space robe while his body flashed in space to evade the dragon corpse's attacks. No one made any objections after hearing Lin Li's words, even though the arrangement didn't seem to be very fair. Even Elder Zoomer also began to unconditionally follow Lin Li's instructions. After all, he did not want to offend such a powerful foreign aide at this time. As expected, the dragon corpse was distracted by Elder Zoomer, whose combat power was second to Lin Li, soon after it started chasing Lin Li. Seeing this scene, Lin Li also immediately stopped flashing around, and flew to a spot that wasn't too far behind the dragon corpse. He raised the Helios scepter, and pointed it forward to cast a seemingly shapeless magic spell, Soul Ricochet. In Lin Li's opinion, even if the dragon corpse was not an undead creature, it could still move like it was alive. It did not appear rigid and mechanical at all in terms of combat, either. Hence, Lin Li felt that it had to be controlled by something. The dragon corpse displayed sanctuary-level power, and even parasites like the Lord Devourer, that could control their hosts, dared not approach the corpse of the dragon of destruction. If it went any nearer, it would probably be crushed and mushed up by the supreme dragon's might. Hence, Lin Li chose the Soul Ricochet, which was the strongest of all spiritual magic spells, and should be considered an enhanced version of Soul Shocking. Soul Shocking would only cause the enemy's soul to become dizzy, but Soul Ricochet had a possibility of making the enemy's soul ricochet and fall apart. Get your varietables at NoVELBN.com. In particular, Lin Li now had massive mental strength, and it had become extremely pure after the refinement of the control crystal of the Sky Castle, so the Soul Ricochet that he cast would definitely be several times more powerful. However, Lin Li was unsure if the magic spell would be effective. After all, the soul of the Dragon of Destruction could not be dispersed easily. However, it should at least be able to make the soul of the dragon corpse dizzy for a period of time. Even if it was a short period of time, it would allow Lin Li and the others to take this opportunity to send a large amount of magic spells into the dragon corpse's stomach through the wound in its chest. The Soul Ricochet roared and surged directly into the dragon corpse's brain. However, what Lin Li did not expect was that there was no soul inside the dragon corpse, which had an empty brain too. There wasn't even a trace of the low-level soul fire, which was unique to undead creatures. It had no life, no soul, and was purely a dragon corpse. Yet, it had a very high combat awareness, as if it was born to be proficient in combat. It didn't seem like a corpse at all. That made Lin Li confused again. Actually, an existence like the Dragon of Destruction should have an immortal soul, but where did its soul go to? Could it be that the thing that Tutankhamun was guarding at the bottom of the Blackstone Mountains was not the Dragon of Destruction's corpse, but its soul? Or rather, did the Immortal King not only take away the magical crystal of the Dragon of Destruction, but also its soul? However, no matter what, launching a soul attack would undoubtedly be ineffective, and Lin Li was put in a difficult spot now. The various types of magic spells could not cause any significant damage to the dragon corpse. There was no way to deal with the dragon corpse at all. If he had the Stars of Fury, the dragon corpse would probably be blasted into nothing. It didn't matter how precious it was, since he already had one in his ring. However, the problem was that he couldn't find the Stars of Fury. More importantly, the dragon corpse was soulless, but its combat power was insane. It was no longer an issue of its defense, but rather a crazy offensive ability. Carson and Gilded Kingdom returned after escorting the people of Gilded Kingdom away, but they soon left again. One was in great pain after being whipped by the dragon corpse's tail, while the other was disfigured by the dragon breath. If they didn't dodge fast, they would really die there. As for the others, the peak legendary powerhouses basically quit the battlefield as they would end up dying by staying there for any longer, regardless of how many trump cards they had. Elvis and the other 4 pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses were all wounded, but their condition wasn't severe to the extent that they would lose their fighting ability. Hence, they were barely hanging on. Even Lin Li, who had received the guidance of Garesco and gained a lot of combat experience in the barbarous arena, almost suffered a huge loss when facing the Dragon of Destruction's corpse. If he hadn't dodged fast enough with the space robe, he would probably have died. Lin Li and the others seemed to be besieging the dragon corpse in this battle, but they knew that they were the ones who had lost the upper hand. No matter how intense their attacks were, they could not hurt the dragon corpse. But once the dragon corpse began to counterattack, they would be in a frenzy and even flee anxiously to avoid being forced into a desperate situation. However, after facing such a scenario a few times, Lin Li suddenly found a key problem, and that was that the dragon corpse only had battle instincts left, yet it would miss its enemy many times. Just now, he observed that there were several occurrences where the dragon corpse almost had the opportunity to kill Elvis and others, but suddenly retreated back into the sky above Cage Island. Could it be that this dragon corpse is like a dog on a chain, and can only move within a certain range of activity? Lin Li couldn't help but come up with such a conjecture. Even though it was just a guess, he could take advantage of it once it was proven to be true. In order to confirm his guess, Lin Li gave a few more instructions to the others, such as telling them to fly far away from the sea area of Cage Island whenever they encountered danger. With Lin Li's instructions, Elvis and others immediately fled even more quickly than before. As long as the situation was amiss, they would immediately fly away from the sea area of Cage Island. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Li observed and discovered that the dragon corpse really seemed to have been chained to Cage Island, and could only move freely in the sea area. So, what exactly was the reason for the dragon corpse to stay at Cage Island? After all, the Gilded Kingdom failed to reinforce the seal, and since the dragon corpse was able to break through, the seal had probably lost its function. Could it be that there was some other seal to limit its range of activities? Of course, there was another possibility, that the dragon corpse purely wanted to guard something there, or could not bear to leave. Although those were possible reasons, the difference between the two was very big. If it was a seal that held it down, there might be a way to fix the seal and make the dragon corpse stay under Cage Island again. However, if it was simply the dragon corpse itself, Lin Li would be ready to flee because that meant that the dragon corpse would dash out of Cage Island without hesitation. If things were to reach that point, Lin Li would probably give up. In order to verify the suspicions in his heart, Lin Li reduced the frequency of his attacks even though he was still on the battlefield. It was almost like he could gradually fade out of the battle. He was not slacking, but rather trying to preserve energy, and was hoping to find some clues from this space. Elder Zoomer had long begun secretly cursing Lin Li for his behavior. After all, among these people, Lin Li and he were the only ones who were a match for the dragon corpse. Now that Lin Li had faded out, all the pressure was on Elder Zoomer, so he was obviously displeased. As for Elvis and the others, they were still strictly following Lin Li's instructions. Although they couldn't figure out what Lin Li was going to do, they continued to fight with the dragon corpse, but none of them had any complaints. At this point, they were completely convinced with Lin Li, the young sanctuary powerhouse, and they were sure that he would have great accomplishments in the future. He might just become a powerful figure like Garesco. If they didn't take the opportunity to suck up to him now, they might never get the chance to do so again. Lin Li's decreased output of attacks caused the battle to develop quickly to a very dangerous point. Elder Zoomer, who was a high-ranking sanctuary powerhouse, was forced into a dangerous situation by the dragon corpse after bearing most of the pressure, while Elvis and the others were extremely disheveled. Although they were not the focus of the dragon corpse, the difference in strength was too large in the end. It was as if they might be annihilated at any time. After all, it was the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction as artist. Even without its soul and dragon crystal, its strength was still at the peak of the sanctuary realm. Besides, unlike other peak sanctuary powerhouses, It was a corpse that had a divine position, which meant that there was a fundamental difference between them, just like the difference between pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses and actual sanctuary powerhouses, who were generally said to be half a step away from godhood. The dragon corpse had a powerful fighting instinct, and there was also a wisp of godly power in its power, which was left behind because it had reached the realm of gods. That wisp of godly power was not to be underestimated. Although it was considered nothing to the true gods, it was a terrifying power to the sanctuary powerhouses below the realm of gods. Moreover, in the face of the godly power, that was almost undetectable, Elder Zoomer and other sanctuary powerhouses all clearly felt that their power was suppressed by some kind of existence. However, at their current level, they still couldn't detect the existence of that wisp of godly power, though they somehow felt that they could not exert all their power. That caused the dragon corpse to become even more menacing. While Elder Zoomer and the others were forced to run for their lives, they were simply being oppressed by the dragon corpse, and they would be thankful enough to remain alive, let alone to seal the dragon corpse again. Outside the battlefield, the people of the Gilded Kingdom were also nervously watching the battle above Cage Island. Although their realm was still far inferior, they could tell that the situation on the battlefield had already become quite unfavorable for them. They were 6 sanctuary powerhouses, who lost the upper hand to a massive dragon corpse that they were besieging. That was simply too terrifying. Although Kantori was not qualified to participate in a battle of such a level, he had good eyesight, and he soon discovered Lin Li's shameless act of idling on the battlefield. He was originally filled with resentment towards Lin Li when he had to ask for help. Now that he had seen Lin Li's lack of effort, he was filled with even more hatred. Atrocious. Does he want to get everyone killed? Kantori clenched his fists and teeth so hard that he was about to crush them. He hated the fact that he had yet to step into the sanctuary realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to go around begging for help, tolerating their attitudes, and giving in to their greedy requests. In Kantori's opinion, he would definitely become an elite sanctuary powerhouse, as long as he could enter the sanctuary realm, just like how he was now in the legendary realm. He could even imagine how he would take revenge on the Tower of Dusk and every force in the breezy plains. At this moment, Lin Li, who everyone thought was slacking off on the battlefield, suddenly seemed to be deep in thought. During his careful observation of the battle just now, he finally discovered something strange. Among the various kinds of power that filled the entire space, there were those that belonged to that dragon corpse, as well as those that belonged to Elder Zoomer and the few pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses. However, there was a vague wisp of power that did not belong to any of the individuals present. That power was very weak, like a candle flame that might get extinguished in the wind at any time. However, it was extremely tenacious. Whenever Lin Li felt it was going to disappear, it would persist and seem very different in the space that was filled with all kinds of violent power. What kind of power is this? Lin Li couldn't help but think of that question. If there was anything unusual on the entire battlefield, it would probably be that unknown power. Although the power didn't seem massive, it was extraordinary since it could exist in this space filled with all kinds of violent powers. Could it be that this is the power that makes the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction unable to leave Cage Island? Putting aside the possibility that the problem lay with the dragon corpse itself, Lin Li felt that the most suspicious thing in the entire battlefield was this power of unknown origin. Although it seemed a little unbelievable that such a weak force could restrain the dragon corpse, which was at the peak of the sanctuary realm, Lin Li really couldn't find anything else that was suspicious apart from it. Although Lin Li's attention was fully focused on it, he was just as aware as the others of the changes in the situation on the battlefield. Of course, he was aware of what kind of situation Elder Zoomer and the others would be in under the crazy attack of that dragon corpse. In fact, he might even be more aware than Elder Zoomer and the others. How long more did they have to persist more in the face of the dragon corpse? This seemingly weak power should be the only clue Lin Li could find now. He knew very well that he had no other better choice, and that Elder Zoomer and the others could not buy themselves any more time to find other possible clues under the attack of the dragon corpse. In the current situation, Lin Li had no choice but to continue pursuing that clue. If his conjecture was right, everything would be better. But if the clue turned out to be useless, Lin Li would have to leave immediately. Lin Li still had an acute self-awareness, and knew very well that he definitely couldn't compete head-on with the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction, with his current strength at all. After all, it was a difference in realm, which was not something that could be made up for with skills or experience. Even Garesco might not be able to defeat this dragon corpse with the power of a god if he was at Lin Li's level. President Flick, how long are you going to observe for? Elder Zoomer finally hollered as he couldn't curb his anger anymore after dodging a fatal blow from the dragon claws. Now, he truly resented Lin Li, the president of the Tower of Dusk. If the situation continued to progress in such a manner, Elder Zoomer and the other elites of his kingdom would probably have to be buried in this hellhole before they could even complete their mission. Naturally, Elder Zoomer thought that Lin Li was just avoiding battle in a bid to reap the ultimate benefits after the two parties fought toe-to-toe against each other. However, in his opinion, it was an extremely stupid decision. If the two ended up suffering heavy losses, that would be fine. But given the Dragon Corpse's terrifying strength, it was obvious that the battle was one-sided, and there wouldn't be a situation where they both incurred huge losses. Faced with the blatant urging of Elder Zoomer, no one who had a decent sense of pride would continue to shamelessly slack off at this moment. They would at least have to make an effort to look like they were trying hard. However, Lin Li continued dodging the attacks and otherwise staying still without releasing a single fireball, as if he hadn't heard anything. None knew that Lin Li's mental strength had already started following that strange source of power and searching for its source at this moment. The force was extremely weak, as if it could break at any time. Hence, while tracing the source, Lin Li also put in a great deal of mental strength and was not having it better than those who were fighting. However, it was impossible to manifest what he was doing, hence, it didn't seem as loud and frighteningly powerful as the intense physical battle. It would be difficult and dangerous for an ordinary person to spread their mental strength out in such an environment that was filled with all kinds of violent power, let alone chase an almost untraceable force. Even Lin Li was putting all his energy into the source of power. At the same time, he was also dealing with the ever-changing situation on the battlefield. How could he have the energy to explain to others? Elder Zoomer, Masterful must be thinking about countermeasures. Our task is to do our best to buy him time. After all, Elvis had once explored Prince Bahir's mausoleum together with Lin Li, so he also knew that Lin Li would never be a person who couldn't set his priorities straight. Although he, too, was clueless about what Lin Li was doing now, he was also certain that he definitely wasn't idling about. They just couldn't understand his actions. Hence, despite being in a dangerous situation, Elvis nonetheless reminded Elder Zoomer, lest he intentionally or unintentionally led the Dragon Corpse to Lin Li and caused a disruption in Lin Li's plan. Of course, more importantly, he was trying to win Lin Li's favor by showing his unwavering trust in him, as he felt that it would definitely have a considerable impact on the future relationship between the Mithril Alliance and the Tower of Dusk in the future. Upon hearing Elvis' words, Elder Zoomer was on the verge of vomiting blood out of anger. He's slacking off so righteously. How can there be such a shameless person? It was his first time cooperating with Lin Li, and although the latter had previously shown strength that surprised him, he did not think that Lin Li was really capable of suddenly turning the situation on the battlefield around. Hence, Elvis' words sounded like an attempt to curry favor with Lin Li to him. However, Elvis' attitude still made Elder Zoomer somewhat scrupulous. Even though Lin Li was shamelessly slacking off in the battle, he was still receiving the support of a few people. If he were to anger them, he might have to resist the strength of the terrifying Dragon Corpse alone. In the end, Elder Zoomer had no choice but to temporarily drop the idea of causing trouble for Lin Li, and hope that the latter was really looking for a weakness of the Dragon Corpse to come up with a solution to turn the situation around like Elvis said. Lin Li was aware of that situation. Although he could not divert some attention to handle it at the moment, he had gained a good impression of Elvis for his sensibility. At this moment, the source of that faint power had finally gradually emerged after Lin Li's careful scrutiny. Just as Lin Li expected, the source of the weak power came from a certain location under Cage Island, and the power was indeed connected to the body of the Dragon Corpse. Although Lin Li could not judge that power based on those clues alone, the fact that it could restrain the Dragon Corpse was enough to make it suspicious. However, Lin Li encountered a great resistance when he was about to move his mental strength deep into the sea below to confirm the source of the power. The power of the Dragon Corpse had completely seeped into this space, including the entire sea area around Cage Island. Although the Dragon Corpse did not have its soul and magical crystal, the sea area around Cage Island was already equivalent to the magical domain of the Dragon Corpse. Lin Li's mental strength was akin to a needle trying to be driven into an iron plate. It was incredibly difficult. Fortunately, Lin Li's mental strength had long been refined by the control crystal of the Sky Castle, and was far beyond that of ordinary sanctuary powerhouses. If there really was a realm above the sanctuary realm, Lin Li's mental strength would probably be at that realm. After Lin Li's unremitting efforts, his mental strength seemed to have really penetrated the sea. Although he encountered a great resistance after that, it was still a good start. Hence, the following events were no longer too difficult to deal with. Following the faint force that he traced, Lin Li's mental strength broke through the heavy resistance and explored all the way to the bottom of Cage Island. Just as Lin Li's mental strength was exploring deep below the Cage Island, the battle situation above Cage Island had also developed to a dangerous stage. The Dragon Corpse that had a terrifying strength had completely taken control over the battle. Everyone in the battlefield, including Elder Zoomer, who was a high-level sanctuary powerhouse, was facing the greatest crisis of their lives. Should we flee? As soon as that thought formed in Elder Zoomer's heart, he immediately severed it. Not only was it embarrassing to run away, he could not care less about the others even if he ran away from such a powerful dragon corpse. The elites of the Gilded Kingdom would definitely die there too. If the team he brought over was killed without even completing the mission, how could he answer to the king of the Gilded Kingdom and the Illuminati? Although the others were unaware, Elder Zoomer, the leader of this operation, was very clear of the importance of the operation to the Illuminati. The success of the operation would have a great impact on the future survival of the Gilded Kingdom and the Illuminati. He had to go all out and fight. Although the sanctuary powerhouses would rarely put their lives at risk because of their incomparably long lifespans, Elder Zoomer had no other choice now. If he failed and caused them to incur great losses, Elder Zoomer would definitely lose all his glory, and might even be punished severely. He would rather die than face that. Since those who came to Elder Zoomer's aid were unreliable, he would have to rely on himself. After dodging another wave of fierce attacks from the dragon corpse, Elder Zoomer suddenly retreated, and raised the staff in his hand as he chanted a long incantation under his breath. With his actions, Elder Zoomer's mana surged, and soon reached a very frightening height. At this point, Elder Zoomer's strength had already reached the peak of the sanctuary realm, and his mana was being stirred vigorously like a storm in the endless ocean. Seeing Elder Zoomer having such a terrifying power, all of a sudden, the dragon corpse was of course barely affected, but Elvis and others could not help but have a drastic change in expression. In their opinion, it was like seeing a mortal become a god right before their eyes. The terrifying fluctuation in mana even made them feel an urge to bow down and submit. That was not an exaggeration at all. After all, Elvis and others were only so-called pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses, who had yet to even grasp the power of the early stages of the sanctuary realm. Compared to real sanctuary powerhouses, they were just like insignificant ants. To them, the power of the peak of the sanctuary realm was already equivalent to the power of the gods, and was at a level that they probably could not reach in their lifetime. However, the dragon corpse was obviously not affected by Elder Zoomer. Although it didn't have a soul or consciousness, it didn't take Elder Zoomer, who had forcefully increased his power to the peak of the sanctuary realm, seriously. Back then, the Dragon of Destruction Azardus had a position as a god, and even the current power of this dragon corpse contained a wisp of godly power. Although it was minute, it allowed the dragon corpse, which was at the peak of the sanctuary realm, to be fundamentally superior to peak sanctuary powerhouses. The difference was like an insurmountable rift. Elder Zoomer had forcefully raised his power to the peak of the sanctuary realm, hence, he obviously had to pay a huge price for it. At this moment, the mana in his body was surging to the extreme, and it even caused ripples to form in the space around him. However, he no longer seemed as calm and majestic as he used to. Instead, his face was extremely sullen, and he seemed to be suffering from excruciating pain. Howl! Elder Zoomer suddenly roared, and pointed his staff forward, after which the mana in his body seemed to have found a vent as it surged out like a flood all of a sudden, causing huge waves to form in the air. Blue beasts that were formed by seawater launched a ferocious attack on the dragon corpse. The blue beasts were almost as large as the dragon, and some were about the same as the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction. Besides, the power that their bodies contained had almost reached the peak of the legendary realm. There were even some that were stronger than Elvis and the other pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses. Lin Li, who did not stop paying attention to the battle, was not at all surprised that Elder Zoomer had played his trump card. After all, sanctuary powerhouses would definitely have a few trump cards to save their lives, though they treasured their lives more than anyone else. Ordinary people would have an average lifespan of a few decades, but the sanctuary powerhouses had extremely long lifespans. Hence, they wouldn't easily put their lives at risk. However, Lin Li felt more or less disappointed by the trump card employed by Elder Zoomer. Such power might be able to scare pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses like Elvis, but Lin Li could see the flaws in it right away. That was the power of the peak of the sanctuary realm, but at the same time it wasn't. Elder Zoomer managed to acquire a massive amount of mana that was comparable to the peak of the sanctuary realm by overloading his body, but his comprehension of the realm could not be increased. Hence, when using the massive mana, Elder Zoomer still could only manipulate it according to his actual realm, and he would not be able to exert a terrifying power comparable to miracles like those who were truly at the peak of the sanctuary realm. Simply put, when a person became stronger, they would at most be able to lift heavier equipment, without being able to use it in other ways, because they did not possess any advanced skills. Besides, the difference between Elder Zoomer and the dragon corpse was not just the difference between a high level and the peak of the realm. The key was that the dragon corpse's power also contained that wisp of godly power. Even if a true peak sanctuary powerhouse was there, he might not be able to do anything to the dragon corpse, let alone Elder Zoomer, who had merely enhanced his mana. However, this trump card of Elder Zoomer was not completely useless. At the very least, it allowed him to last a little longer under the attack of the dragon corpse. Perhaps this time did not make much of a difference to Elder Zoomer, but it was very important for Lin Li. After all, the brief period of additional time increased the possibility of Lin Li finding the source of that weak power. In fact, the development of the battle was just like what Lin Li had expected. Elder Zoomer's earth-shattering strike was insignificant in the face of the dragon corpse, and the marine beasts that were at the peak of the legendary realm were turning into water after being struck by the dragon corpse's tail. The terrifying gigantic waves smashed against the dragon corpse, but they seemed to just be giving the dragon corpse a bath, allowing the scales on the body of the dragon corpse to become glistening and dazzling. The result was so devastating that Elder Zoomer almost vomited blood. Although he knew that his power was not comparable to that of a real peak sanctuary powerhouse, the gap was simply too huge. Elder Zoomer felt that the power he now possessed would at least allow him to cause some damage to the dragon corpse, even though he might not be able to fight the dragon corpse head-on. However, reality gave Elder Zoomer a slap in the face. Clearly, his power was still not enough for him to become the dragon corpse's opponent. Hence, as soon as Elder Zoomer released that shocking burst of attacks, as if he was about to kill the dragon corpse in the blink of an eye, he was once again chased by the dragon corpse. Of course, his trump card was not completely useless, as it at least allowed him to escape the attack of the dragon corpse with a little more ease. Finally, just when Elder Zoomer and Elvis and others found it hard to endure, a look of surprise formed on Lin Li's face. Through the pursuit of that faint power, Lin Li's mental strength found the source of that power in the deepest part below Cage Island. Through his spiritual senses, Lin Li could basically determine that the source of that wisp of power was none other than a sealing array that was operating so slowly that it seemed like it might stop at any moment. That discovery surprised Lin Li, but at the same time he felt extremely conflicted. Obviously, the sealing array was being faulty for some reason. In order to reseal the dragon corpse, he clearly had to repair the sealing array. However, Lin Li would have to personally dive into the bottom of the sea in order to do that. If it was in normal times, Lin Li's strength, which was close to the sanctuary realm, would allow him to dive deep into the sea without difficulty, and it would be as easy as walking on the surface. However, things were different now, as the entire sea area had become the domain of the dragon corpse. The power of the dragon corpse had seeped into every inch of space. Lin Li had merely put some of his mental strength into the bottom of the sea, and he could already feel the immense pressure. If it were to really dive deep into the bottom, the danger he would face would not be inferior to fighting the dragon corpse head-on. To Lin Li, diving into the deep sea successfully was a huge challenge, and he might really end up falling there. Besides, diving deep into the sea didn't necessarily mean that he would be able to repair the seal. Even Lin Li, a guru, could not be sure for now. In particular, the dragon corpse was the corpse of the dragon of destruction, so was it related to the immortal king? If the seal was set by someone else, Lin Li would be more confident in repairing it, but the immortal king was an insanely powerful expert that could replicate the stars of fury. God knew what kind of seal he would have set under the sea. Elder Zoomer, are you still refusing to tell the truth at this point? How exactly did this dragon corpse come about, and what exactly is the purpose of your visit to Cage Island this time? Lin Li didn't say anything about the seal, and instead joined the battle again, which relieved the pressure and burden on Elder Zoomer and the others. However, before Elder Zoomer could catch his breath, he heard Lin Li's question, and was shocked to the point of nearly losing his breath. It was not an easy question to answer, and he didn't know what Lin Li knew. Hence, if he gave an unsatisfactory answer, Lin Li might really leave them in a lurch in a moment of anger. However, telling the truth was obviously not a good choice, as that would defeat the purpose of fighting there. Of course, at the end of the day, Elder Zoomer had experienced all sorts of things before. Hence, he soon got a grip on his emotions, and did not reveal any strange expression, either. He did his best to cope with the dragon corpse's attacks while panting heavily, and saying, "Since you've asked about it, I will tell you the truth, President Felix. The dragon corpse was indeed not sealed here by any titan, but by our ancestors of the Gilded Kingdom. In fact, the people of the Gilded Kingdom did not know the true origin of the dragon corpse, but just thought that it was the corpse of a very powerful ancient giant dragon. Moreover, when the people of the Gilded Kingdom first saw the dragon corpse, it already seemed to have a life of its own, like it was now. Before the Dark Age, the ancestors of the Gilded Kingdom had already begun to migrate overseas, and established the Gilded Kingdom. While the entire Anral plunged into darkness, The Gilded Kingdom, which was far away in the sea, had undergone a period of rapid development thanks to the natural barrier the endless ocean constituted. Under the protection of the powerful alchemical ships, the Gilded Kingdom incorporated several islands that were suitable for living. Legend had it that during its peak, the population of the Gilded Kingdom was almost as large as that of Anral. However, the wonderful days were short-lived. When the banner of the Gilded Kingdom was erected on every island in the endless ocean, a dragon corpse that did not have a soul, or a dragon crystal, appeared in front of them. It could devour an entire island with one mouthful of dragon breath, and a roar could spark waves that were tens of meters high. No one knew what this dragon corpse was after. All they knew was that it was heading towards the depths of the endless ocean. The people on the islands it went to would either be turned into ashes by its dragon breath, or washed away by the huge waves and tsunamis. In a short period of time, the dragon corpse caused an unimaginable loss for the Gilded Kingdom, which was just like the end of the world. The Gilded Kingdom deployed all its fleets to stop the dragon corpse from flying towards the capital. But that battle became a key turning point in the Gilded Kingdom's decline. In that battle, the alchemical ships of the Gilded Kingdom, which had been crossing the endless ocean, seemed to have become useless, while 2/3 of the battleships sunk into the deep ocean forever. Fortunately, at the last moment, the ancestors of the Gilded Kingdom and the priest of the Illuminati returned in time to start a crazy battle. The battle lasted more than 10 days, and the entire sea seemed to be in chaos as there were corpses of giant sea beasts floating everywhere on the surface. In the end, 2 sanctuary powerhouses led the dragon corpse to Cage Island, and managed to activate the seal that had been set there previously, thus sealing the ferocious dragon corpse under Cage Island. However, the power of the dragon corpse was so strong that the seal set by the 2 peak sanctuary powerhouses could not hold it down permanently. Hence, the ancestors of the Gilded Kingdom left an alchemy array to seal it, and told their descendants in the Gilded Kingdom to come here every once in a while to reinforce the seal through the alchemy array to prevent the disaster from happening again. Elder Zoomer unraveled the story, and Lin Li also managed to get the information he wanted to know. The seal under Cage Island was indeed left by the ancestors of Gilded Kingdom. Besides, he could tell from the fact that the seal had to be reinforced every once in a while that the seal should not be of a high level. If it had been set by the Immortal King, it probably wouldn't have had to be reinforced every once in a while. Of course, Lin Li wasn't that naive to think that Elder Zoomer was telling the complete truth. It could be said that 10% of what Elder Zoomer said were lies to make it seem that he was telling the complete truth. That was Lin Li's forte, and he naturally wouldn't be gullible enough to believe Elder Zoomer. However, now was not the time to bother with that, and Lin Li was too lazy to continue asking questions. Getting the information he wanted was enough for him. Since the seal was set up by the ancestors of the Gilded Kingdom, and had to be reinforced every once in a while, the seal was of such a level that Lin Li was still relatively confident in repairing it. After saying those words to Lin Li, Elder Zoomer didn't feel remorseful or guilty at all. Instead, he asked with an expectant look, "President Flick, did you think of any solution? Can you guys give this dragon corpse a heavy blow?" Lin Li asked, not answering his question. Elder Zoomer was instantly frustrated after hearing Lin Li's question. If he was capable of striking the dragon corpse hard, he wouldn't have to go around looking for help. He felt that Lin Li was scolding him. However, Elder Zoomer knew that Lin Li definitely wasn't joking with him in the current situation, and thus had no choice but to say with an awkward look, "President Flick, I'm afraid we can't do that. In fact, not to mention a heavy blow, their current problem was that they simply could not even cause significant damage to the dragon corpse." Even Elder Zoomer, who had massive power that was near the peak of the sanctuary realm, could not do anything to the dragon corpse with any special means. "Oh," Lin Li said. He didn't have much of a reaction, nor did he mock Elder Zoomer over this issue. Instead, he nodded slightly and continued, "In that case, think of a way to help me hold it back." What? Elder Zoomer was really dumbfounded as he initially thought that Lin Li had come up with some feasible solution. Why did Lin Li still want him and the others to fight the dragon corpse at the end of the day? To put it nicely, they were told to hold back the dragon corpse, but in fact, they were just getting themselves abused. Stall for time. We're putting our lives at risk. However, Lin Li did not give Elder Zoomer the opportunity to refuse, and instead activated the space robe on his body before disappearing beside Elder Zoomer in a flash. Thus, Elder Zoomer had to face the dragon corpse alone again. No matter how unwilling he was, he had no choice but to go all out to fight the dragon corpse. However, this time, Lin Li did not idle on the battlefield like he had just now, but he immediately opened his domain world after avoiding the dragon corpse's attack from the front. However, Lin Li's domain world could not be opened easily in such an environment, and the pressure around it caused the domain world to make an overwhelming cracking sound as soon as it appeared. Usually, the domain world opened by sanctuary powerhouses would play a protective role in such circumstances, and once it expanded to a certain buffer space, it would be enough. However, Lin Li didn't stop after unfolding the domain world, and instead increased the output of mana, and continuously expanded the domain world to a larger range. Normally, the domain world of a sanctuary realm powerhouse would be able to expand almost infinitely, and it could even engulf a city or a kingdom. However, the area here was the domain of the Dragon Corpse, where every inch of space was filled with the massive power of the Dragon Corpse. It was extremely difficult for Lin Li to expand his domain world in such an environment. It was tantamount to a sanctuary realm powerhouse going into another sanctuary realm powerhouse's domain world, and unfolding his own domain world. It was just like two sanctuary realm powerhouses having a face-to-face battle. Besides, it was almost a battle that was devoid of any fancy tricks. Although Lin Li did not seem to be fighting the Dragon Corpse now, the expansion of his domain world was equivalent to a toe-to-toe battle with the Dragon Corpse. Lin Li might have told Elder Zoomer and the others to hold the Dragon Corpse back, but the one who really put in the most effort and was in the greatest danger was him. The others couldn't understand what Lin Li was doing. To put it bluntly, they felt that he was just courting death. They all knew how terrifying the Dragon Corpse was. The two sanctuary powerhouses and 4 pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses were all helpless in the face of the Dragon Corpse, whose strength was probably close to that of the gods. If it was just a fight, the few of them could still persist for some time. If they were to really fight it head-on, it would be a death wish. However, Lin Li did not explain anything to them. Of course, he didn't have any extra energy to explain anything, and simply constantly increased his output of mana to expand his domain world that was almost about to crumble inch by inch. Compared to Lin Li's domain world, the surrounding space simply seemed to be frozen, as if someone was blowing an airbag that was hidden deep in the ground. Everyone was confused about what Lin Li was trying to do, but faced with the current situation, they had no choice but to follow Lin Li's instructions. In fact, even without Lin Li's instructions, they still had no alternative, as it seemed unlikely for them to escape as well. Elder Zoomer had a reason not to escape, while Elvis and the others were too weak to do so. Even if they chose to escape, they would probably lose the trust of their companions in addition to facing the pursuit of the Dragon Corpse. By then, they would die a horrible death. Now, they could only put all their hopes on Lin Li in hopes that he, the young sanctuary powerhouse, was not really doing nothing. They bucked themselves up and focused on compressing every ounce of power in their bodies to escape from death again and again under the Dragon Corpse's attacks. At the beginning, the Dragon Corpse was still chasing Elder Zoomer and others, emitting a terrifying dragon breath that was so powerful that it seemed to be able to rip the sky apart. However, although the Dragon Corpse did not have any soul and self-awareness, its powerful combat instincts allowed it to quickly detect what Lin Li was doing, and thus his actions vaguely seemed to be posing a threat to it. The Dragon Corpse's instinct was actually simple. Anyone who posed a threat to it would be finished off first. Hence, the Dragon Corpse immediately shook off the people it was chasing before flapping its wings and rushing towards Lin Li. However, in the face of the Dragon Corpse that was pouncing on him, Lin Li stayed still as if he didn't see it at all. He was still working hard to expand his domain world. It was not that Lin Li wasn't aware of the danger involved, but rather that the expansion of his domain world just now would be a waste of effort. If he suddenly moved away, he'd have to start from scratch. Of course, Lin Li would not really put his own life at risk. He had already weighed the dangers, and if he wanted to dodge, he could just flash away. Hence, the reason that he was staying still now was considered a test for others. If they couldn't hold the Dragon Corpse back, Lin Li wouldn't have to try anything else. Anyway, it would be unlikely for him to succeed no matter how many times he tried. He just had to evade. On the contrary, if those people were reliable, Lin Li would have a peace of mind and do what he wanted. In the beginning, Elder Zoomer and others really hesitated a little. After all, they were facing the ferocious Dragon Corpse, and they could not dodge in time at all. How could they possibly dare to charge forward and stop the Dragon Corpse? However, when they saw that Lin Li was actually staying still without evading, and was still expanding his magical domain, they knew that they had to go over. I hope you really have a way to deal with the Dragon Corpse, Elder Zoomer thought to himself with resentment. However, he dared not slow down at all, and instead waved the staff in his hand while approaching the Dragon Corpse. He did not dare to wait for the Dragon Corpse to approach, and instead pointed the staff from afar. The surging mana immediately spread outwards, and countless Ice Series and Water Series magic spells converged to form a huge magic torrent that surged towards the Dragon Corpse. At the same time, Elvis and others did not dare to hesitate any longer at this point as they simply started activating the mana in their bodies. and flew towards the dragon corpse. All sorts of magic spells like thunderbolt, lightning, flames, and hail swarmed towards the dragon corpse like a storm. They surprisingly drowned out the massive dragon corpse. If it was at the beginning, the crowd might still be excited about it, but they had already gotten used to it at this point. Everyone knew that the seemingly powerful offensive spells could barely cause an impact on the dragon corpse. The dragon corpse's defense was absolutely invincible, and they couldn't imagine what kind of weapon was actually able to leave such a huge wound in the dragon corpse's chest. Sure enough, just as everyone expected, the dragon corpse flapped its massive wings twice amidst the countless magic spells, and all of the magic spells were instantly extinguished like candlelight. The figure that emerged from the magic storm was intact without any wounds, just like before. Although the indiscriminate bombardment of the crowd did not hurt the dragon corpse, it successfully attracted the latter's attention. It might have a strong combat instinct, but that did not mean that it was smart. After all, it had lost its soul, and everything was based on instinct. Compared to low-level animals, its intelligence was probably inferior. Of course, Elder Zoomer, Elvis, and the others had to begin escaping in a mess after being targeted by the dragon corpse. Fortunately, they were already prepared for it, but when they saw the dragon corpse surge towards them, they still immediately fled like shocked birds. Although it seemed embarrassing, no one cared about their pride in this situation. Staying alive was the most important. Not to mention, the enemy they faced was a terrifying existence at the peak of the sanctuary realm. To be able to survive under the attack of the dragon corpse that was at the peak of the sanctuary realm was already something worth bragging about. Only fools would try to act like heroes. If they died at the hands of the dragon corpse, others would definitely not say that they were heroes, and would simply call them idiots. The 5 sanctuary powerhouses including Elder Zoomer fled in all directions, while the dragon corpse followed its instincts without hesitation, and surged directly towards Elder Zoomer, who was the strongest. That made Elder Zoomer feel extremely depressed. What's wrong with being stronger? Why did the dragon corpse attack me? Although the dragon corpse was large, it wasn't clumsy when it flew. It only took 2 flaps of its wings to catch up to Elder Zoomer. Immediately afterwards, the dragon corpse opened its mouth and spat out a ball of dragon breath that resembled black clouds. It surged towards Elder Zoomer like a storm. Elder Zoomer was more experienced in dealing with it, hence, he managed to block the dragon breath with a layer of magical defense. However, at the same time, Elder Zoomer did not stop, and instead made a sharp turn to change direction before speeding up to escape the dragon breath. It was because he knew that no matter how many layers of magical defense, he could only block the dragon breath for a moment. Staying in place would just be courting death. As expected, in the instant that Elder Zoomer was about to dodge, the dragon breath had already destroyed dozens to 100 layers of magical defense and was about to press against his back. Although Elder Zoomer had already evaded several times, he still could not help but break out in a cold sweat. He didn't feel the slightest bit of joy for escaping. Instead, he felt like he was dancing on a tightrope. God knew when he might no longer be able to dodge. Besides, just as the dragon corpse was about to chase Elder Zoomer, Elvis and the 4 other pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses also once again launched an attack on the dragon corpse to attract some of its attention. Although they were also very reluctant to do such a silly thing as to make others attack, they were well aware that without Elder Zoomer, a high-level sanctuary powerhouse, it would be more difficult and dangerous to hold the dragon corpse back. Pester it, not let it chase after you. After Lin Li's domain world expanded to a certain level, it was as if it had reached its limit, and no matter how much mana he put out, it would be impossible to make the domain world expand by another inch. The laws of the domain world had already begun crumbling too, and the entire domain world looked like it was covered in spiderwebs. Clearly, although the crowd drew the dragon corpse's attention to themselves to prevent it from disturbing Lin Li, the dragon corpse's instinctive control over the power of this space was something that they couldn't affect at all. Hence, Lin Li wanted Elder Zoomer to pester the dragon corpse, but not just lead it around. Instead, he wanted them to make it end up having no time to control the power in the space. To be frank, Lin Li's request was a little overboard. Elder Zoomer and the others would be left with no choice but to flee under the attack of the dragon corpse. If they wanted to affect its power, they would have to fight it head-on. Therefore, the crowd was a bit dumbfounded after hearing Lin Li's words, and they even thought that they had heard wrongly. What he said seemed to be no different from making them step onto the path of death. Of course, Lin Li also knew that it seemed unrealistic to make them pester the dragon corpse. Regardless of whether or not they had the courage, their strength alone was too low for them to last a long time in the face of the dragon corpse, let alone make the dragon corpse put in more effort. Sensing that they were somewhat hesitant, Lin Li obviously knew what they were worried about. Hence, while maintaining the expansion of his debris of the stars. He took out 4 pieces of the debris of the stars, namely raging flames, polar snow, rebirth, and thunderbolt, and tossed them out. The 4 pieces of the debris of the stars represented the power of the 4 elements, and could be used to strengthen Elvis and the other 4 pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses. Lin Li's mastery of the debris of the stars had already reached a high level, and he couldn't fully utilize the power of the debris of the stars only because he didn't have the stars of fury. However, with this mastery, he did not have to worry about the debris of the stars getting taken away by someone else. Even if someone else took it, he could easily just get the debris of the stars back. Elvis and others were no strangers to the debris of the stars. Before the dragon corpse appeared, they had already had their strength enhanced by the debris of the stars. However, at that time, they could not use the debris of the stars, and could only accept its power. Now, they finally had the opportunity to use the debris of the stars personally. No one would be greedy at such a juncture. They didn't think that Lin Li was a fool, who would hand such a powerful magic weapon to them without leaving something for himself to rely on. Besides, even if they really had means to control it, they would not have the guts to covet the items of a real sanctuary powerhouse. Elvis and others knew very well what Lin Li handed the magical weapons to them for. Hence, after getting the debris of the stars, they immediately began activating the huge power of the debris of the stars, and launching a ferocious attack on the dragon corpse. Besides, due to the fact that the debris of the stars contained the purest laws, it was different from the way Elvis, Elder Zoomer, and the others forcefully increased their strength by overusing their mana with the help of the power of the debris of the stars. Elvis and the other 4 pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses were actually exerting power that was not inferior to that of real sanctuary powerhouses. Seeing Elvis and the others displaying the power of a real sanctuary powerhouse with the help of those magical weapons, Elder Zoomer was filled with jealousy. If he had had such a magical weapon, he would have been able to play a greater role in the battle. However, Elder Zoomer knew that Lin Li obviously wouldn't feel safe about handing the magical weapon to him, because of the Gilded Kingdom's relationship with the Tower of Dusk. However, the fact that the strength of Elvis and the others increased made Elder Zoomer feel a lot less pressured. Hence, it was more or less a relief. The 5 sanctuary powerhouses immediately launched a siege on the dragon corpse, and they were no longer just leading the dragon corpse around this time, and were instead exerting their power to the extreme. Although they could not really cause much damage to the dragon corpse even by doing so, they could battle the dragon corpse to a certain extent. As the enemy's strength increased, the dragon corpse also once again increased the power of its output due to its combat instincts. That also caused the balance to be thrown off again. After all, the dragon corpse was the corpse of the dragon of destruction, which could not be defeated by the attacks of a few sanctuary powerhouses. However, due to the fact that the dragon corpse increased the attacks on Elvis and others, Lin Li immediately felt that the pressure outside his domain world suddenly decreased. His domain world, which had stopped growing, began to expand outward again. This time, the expansion was clearly much faster than before, as if it was a rebound after being suppressed for too long. In the blink of an eye, the domain world had already engulfed half of Cage Island, and was still continuing to expand. Elder Zoomer, Elvis, and the others were more and more confused about Lin Li's approach. They could never imagine Lin Li's reason for expanding his domain world at this moment. Does he want to incorporate the dragon corpse into his domain world? Generally speaking, incorporating the enemy into one's domain world was indeed a means of overcoming the enemy. However, in order to do so, one would have to consider the strength of the target. The dragon corpse was an existence that was at the peak of the sanctuary realm, and he would be courting death by incorporating it into his domain world. However, Elder Zoomer, Elvis, and the others did not have the time to ask Lin Li about it now. Although Elvis and the others had each had their power increased with the help of the debris of the stars, their situation had once again become tough and tricky because the debris of the stars had shifted the focus of its power. After all, Elvis and the others had only just gotten their hands on the debris of the stars, and were unable to fully grasp their power like Lin Li. Hence, they could only channel a portion of its power for their own use, with their own understanding of the laws. Although that power would allow them to be on par with real sanctuary powerhouses, they could only be considered beginners in the sanctuary realm. No matter what, they were still worlds apart from the dragon corpse. Therefore, apart from when Elvis and the others caught the dragon corpse off guard in the beginning, the subsequent battle was similar to the previous events. The only difference would be that Elvis and the others could no longer flee everywhere. Their task was to attract the attention of the dragon corpse and attack it. In order to do so, they would have to retaliate more intensely. Roar. A hoarse dragon roar sounded, but it was emotionless. A soulless dragon corpse would probably no longer have any emotions like anger. Its roaring seemed to be out of instinct too. However, Elder Zoomer, Elvis, and the others, including Lin Li, could also feel that the dragon corpse's power had been increased by another notch after the hoarse roar. The absence of anger did not mean that it wouldn't be explosive. Once its power output accumulated to a certain level and exceeded a certain critical point, the terrifying power that would be exerted would be on par with that of an angry dragon. With the dragon corpse facing Elvis, Elder Zoomer, and the others whom the dragon corpse hadn't been able to get rid of for a long time, the power that the dragon corpse had been investing in the battle broke through that critical point. Elvis, Elder Zoomer, and the others would not be able to resist that overwhelming and terrifying power even if they possessed the debris of the stars. Bang! The huge dragon tail heavily smacked the defensive crystal wall that Elvis and the others had constructed with the power of the debris of the stars. The defensive crystal wall, that had just resisted many attacks, was instantly shattered. Next, a dragon claw, which seemed to be hanging upside down like a mountain peak, grabbed the defensive crystal wall with the power of heaven and earth, and smashed it into pieces. Although Elvis and others were not overwhelmed by the power of the debris of the stars, and were still continuing to increase their defense, the defensive wall constructed with the power of the debris of the stars seemed as fragile as eggshell in the face of the dragon corpse. The 4 pieces of the debris of the stars that Elvis and the others were holding were constantly flashing, but the increase in their defense could not catch up with the speed of the dragon corpse's attack. Besides, due to the fact that they had given up on running around right from the beginning, they could no longer flee now. They could only watch the layers of defense being broken as their deaths approached. At this moment, everyone was in despair. Even Elder Zoomer, who was a high-level sanctuary powerhouse, did not think they could survive the terrifying attack of the dragon corpse. Although it was said that the soul of a sanctuary powerhouse was indestructible, there was no point in having a soul without a physical body. As for Elvis and others, they were overwhelmed with even more fear. Although they had also stepped into the sanctuary realm, they had only gained an increase in lifespan, and had yet to reach the point where their souls were indestructible. If they died now, it would be the end of everything. It had been less than 2 years since they entered the sanctuary realm, and they hadn't enjoyed the glory of being in the sanctuary realm yet. No one would be willing to die like that. However, at this time, Lin Li's domain world seemed to explode, and it expanded outward again rapidly in an instant, enveloping the entire sea area of Cage Island. Afterwards, Lin Li immediately chanted an incantation, and raised the Helios scepter without even looking at Elder Zoomer and the others. With Lin Li's actions, an incredibly massive mana fluctuation suddenly emerged above Cage Island, and the space seemed to be trembling. Next, ripples began to form in the sky before spreading outwards. However, the ripples did not gradually calm down, and instead got more and more intense with time. Eventually, they turned into waves, and the sky even became warped. Everyone was stunned by this scene. Even Elvis, Elder Zoomer, and the others had already forgotten that they were in danger at this moment. They could not imagine what kind of power would cause such a terrifying change in the world. Even a peak sanctuary powerhouse might not be able to do it. The dragon corpse that was about to kill Elder Zoomer and the others also seemed to feel threatened by the enormous power in the sky. Perhaps that was the problem with not having a soul. After sensing a greater threat, the dragon corpse surprisingly gave up even though it was already close to killing the group. It then turned to face the sky, as if it was trying to confirm what it was that was posing the threat to it. Everyone watched as a sharp object that looked like an inverted tower emerged from the center of the violent fluctuations in the sky with a massive power. It was as if a miracle had descended in space. Yes, it's the Sky Castle. Those who had been to the Tower of Dusk would have seen the Sky Castle before even if they hadn't personally gone to the Sky Castle. At this moment, they immediately recognized the famous Sky Castle that was floating above the Tower of Dusk. After regaining their senses, they couldn't help but exclaim in shock. To be frank, they didn't feel much when they saw the Sky Castle during their visit to the Tower of Dusk, as they felt that it was simply just a building in the sky. However, now that they had seen the Sky Castle breaking through the space and descending on the battlefield, they really felt the shock that the Sky Castle brought them. The terrifying might that was like the descent of a deity left them in awe. The Sky Castle's descent was rather quick, and everything from its emergence to its descent was only a matter of seconds. When the Sky Castle completely descended into the battlefield, Lin Li continued with his actions. Under his manipulation, the alchemy array and Magath arrays began to be activated at the same time. The Sky Castle that originally looked gray and dull immediately began glistening with complicated streams of light from the magic, thus turning the entire Sky Castle into a city of light. At the same time, the magical waves emanating from the Sky Castle also became more and more violent as they surged in all directions like a tsunami. The dragon corpse of the Dragon of Destruction had clearly felt an unprecedented threat as it flapped its wings twice and abandoned them to fly towards the Sky Castle. Perhaps it might seem foolish to others, but not to forget, the dragon corpse had peak sanctuary realm strength, and if it were to charge towards the Sky Castle, they might be the ones at a loss. However, since Lin Li summoned the Sky Castle, how could he let the dragon corpse break through to the top easily? The countless mage arrays and alchemy arrays were soon charged to their maximum. Immediately afterwards, dazzling rays of light radiated out, and they covered the Sky Castle, making it look like a sun that landed on the surface of the sea. All the magical weapons of the Sky Castle were switched on at the same time. The magic spells launched by the magical crystal cannons, dragon flame fireballs, mage arrays, and alchemy arrays surged out at the dragon corpse, immediately like a raging river that made the entire space quake. Upon sight of the groundbreaking attack, everyone present could not help but be frightened and petrified. The attack from the Sky Castle could not be compared to the ones that the Gilded Kingdom had launched previously. Elder Zoomer believed that if the Gilded Kingdom's fleet was attacked, all the battleships would probably turn into ashes in this incredibly ferocious attack. Elvis and the others, who had already given up the idea of going against the Tower of Dusk, were shocked to see the terrifying power displayed by the Sky Castle. Now, they were exhilarated. They were now even more convinced that as long as they were led by the Tower of Dusk, even the Gilded Kingdom would not pose a threat to them. Of course, a more important thing was that the power displayed by the Sky Castle also allowed Elvis and the others to see some hope. In the face of the terrifying attack of the Sky Castle, the dragon corpse would definitely not be able to escape the fate of suffering a severe injury, unless it was a true god. They were still sober, and did not expect the appearance of the Sky Castle to be able to signal the death of the dragon corpse immediately. However, as long as the dragon corpse could be seriously injured, it would not be impossible to kill it. Faced with the endless offensive spells from the Sky Castle, the dragon corpse finally felt threatened, and dodged for the first time. However, even though the huge dragon corpse did not seem too clumsy at this moment, it was too late for it to dodge. The offensive spells that were like a flood instantly blasted into the dragon corpse, and a loud roar immediately filled the entire space. With the hoarse roar, the dragon corpse finally opened its mouth and spewed out black blood. However, the black blood did not remain in midair for long, as it was turned into nothing by the strong offensive spells in an instant. Seeing this scene, Elvis and others almost cheered in excitement. The battle had lasted for a long time, but the dragon corpse had suffered a real injury for the first time. Besides, the dragon corpse was actually blasted to the point of vomiting blood. Clearly, it had suffered a severe injury. If that were to happen again a few more times, the dragon corpse might really die. However, although the magic facilities of the Sky Castle were still in operation, they did not continue to attack the dragon corpse, which left the crowd feeling regretful. Of course, they could imagine that an attack of such a scale could not be supported without hundreds of legendary magical crystals. Even if the Tower of Dusk was rich, they would not be able to keep up with that consumption. However, unlike what everyone thought, Lin Li did not let the Sky Castle continue to attack for that reason. It was not that they were stingy with those few magical crystals. He knew better than anyone else what kind of strength the dragon corpse had. It had no soul, and relied entirely on its instincts. Hence, it would be almost impossible to kill the dragon corpse, even with the power of the Sky Castle, unless it was broken into pieces. Besides, it was the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction, a unique dragon corpse and animal, which Lin Li did not want to see get blown to pieces. Hence, regardless of the perspective, resealing the dragon corpse was one of the best options for Lin Li. Besides, Lin Li also wanted to find out what kind of secrets the ancestors of the Gilded Kingdom were hiding when they sealed the dragon corpse there. Thus, after the dragon corpse was severely damaged by the Sky Castle, Lin Li immediately ordered the people controlling the Sky Castle to stop attacking, and switched to being on standby to prepare for any possible attacks. Afterwards, Lin Li expanded his domain world before putting it away again immediately. It simply formed a protective layer around his body. He said to Elder Zoomer and the others, "Now, continue to stall it." Logically speaking, the person who would be most reluctant to risk his life to fight the dragon corpse in this situation should be Elder Zoomer. However, the latter only froze for a moment, and seemed to quickly remember something. He didn't turn Lin Li down at all, and simply turned around to launch an attack on the heavily wounded dragon corpse. Seeing Elder Zoomer's performance, the corners of Lin Li's mouth curled into a smile as he had already expected it. Next, his body flashed, and he vanished from the battlefield. Lin Li left the battlefield while Elder Zoomer began fighting the dragon corpse. Although Elder Zoomer and the others had no idea what was going on, they nonetheless chose to believe Lin Li. Anyway, they had the debris of the stars that Lin Li had handed them, and the dragon corpse had been severely injured by the Sky Castle. Hence, they would at least be able to defend themselves in this situation. In the depths of Cage Island's ocean bed, there suddenly emerged warped fluctuations, and Lin Li's body sunk deep into the bottom of the ocean immediately afterwards, holding a small green person in his hand. It was the goblin, Angelano, who had been researching alchemy in the Sky Castle. Although they were on the bottom of the sea, it was as if Lin Li was in a different world, as the ink-like seawater had no effect on him at all. In fact, they could even see some miscellaneous objects passing through his body in the water. However, that was different from the void of the stars technique that would entrust one's body to nothingness. Lin Li simply used the power of his own domain world to keep himself in his own domain world. Angelano, who was being carried by Lin Li, was still wriggling his body in a bid to break free from Lin Li's hand. At the same time, he was cursing at Lin Li for failing to keep to his promise. However, at this moment, Angelano finally also resigned to his fate. As if he was a cat that was being lifted by its neck. With his limbs hanging limply, he craned his neck and said, "Okay, put me down. This is the last time. I repeat, this is the last time." Since the last time he explored the Sky Castle and went through several near-death experiences with Lin Li, Angelano had already been frightened to the point of being emotionally traumatized. After returning, he had been staying in the Sky Castle. One reason was that he wanted to study the alchemical technology of the Sky Castle, and another was that he felt that there was probably no safer place in this world than the Sky Castle. In a certain sense, Angelano was right, especially since there was nothing in Anral that could pose a threat to the Sky Castle now. Unless Lin Li offended all the sanctuary powerhouses, one or two of them would never be able to fight the Sky Castle. However, what Angelano hadn't expected was that Lin Li directly summoned the Sky Castle to the battlefield this time, and he almost got a heart attack when the horrifying aura suddenly surged into the Sky Castle. To make matters worse, Lin Li suddenly appeared in front of him before he could even calm down, and picked him up to leave without any explanation or discussion. Of course, there was no need for Lin Li to explain. Angelano was not a fool, either. Seeing that the Sky Castle had been summoned, and that Lin Li was extremely anxious, he knew that there was definitely trouble. Unlike Connorus and the others, he did not sign any contract with Lin Li. Hence, he cursed and struggled throughout the entire journey. When he was carried to the depths of the sea, Angelano finally resigned himself to his fate, knowing that he could not make Lin Li change his mind anyway. Moreover, he also felt that there was a lively battle on the entire battlefield above, while the bottom of the sea seemed to be relatively calm. Clearly, Lin Li did not bring him there to fight. Lin Li only put Angelano down when he saw that he had stopped struggling. He then used the domain world to carry him, and dived in the direction he had sensed with his mental strength. The reason he deliberately brought Angelano over was mainly because of the complexity of this seal. After all, it was the seal that sealed the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction. Even if the Immortal King was not the one who'd laid the seal, it was certainly not something minor. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible to seal an existence at the peak of the sanctuary realm that had the power of the gods for thousands of years. Therefore, even though Lin Li was quite confident in his own abilities, he still didn't dare to be careless at all during such a critical juncture. Although he could not picture the details of the seal accurately through mental strength detection, Lin Li knew that the seal had to contain some alchemy arrays, since the people of the Gilded Kingdom had reinforced the seal using alchemy arrays. However, an alchemy array alone would never be able to possess the power to seal such a strong dragon corpse regardless of its level. It could be said that although the alchemy array played an important role in the seal, it definitely wouldn't be the core of the seal. At most, it could only be used for replenishing mana. In other words, Lin Li needed to repair the core of the seal, and not only the alchemy array. If the dragon corpse had not run out, repairing it would not have been much of a problem for Lin Li. However, the dragon corpse had already run out now, and judging from the faint power of the seal, Lin Li was almost certain that the entire core of the seal had been severely damaged, and might completely stop functioning. It would be extremely troublesome to repair. Hence, Lin Li carried Angelano over. If the situation was really that serious, he would at least have a helper. Although Angelano mainly mastered the technology of the alchemy colossus, he was definitely not weak in terms of alchemy arrays. Besides, he had been following Lin Li for a long time, and even if he wasn't a guru of alchemy, he had definitely reached the peak of the master level. The environment at the bottom of the sea was extremely harsh, but it did not cause much of an obstruction to Lin Li. Besides, the Sky Castle had caused the dragon corpse to suffer a severe blow, thus causing its power to weaken greatly. Hence, Lin Li took Angelano, and quickly found a massive sealed space at the bottom of Cage Island. At this juncture, there was already a massive hole in the crystal wall outside the sealed space, which was obviously caused by the dragon corpse that had rushed out. At this point, the entire crystal wall had also become very illusory and weak like a bubble. Through the hidden crystal wall, they could see a large and complicated array in the center of the space within the crystal wall. However, the light of the array was also constantly flickering, just like a candle in the wind that would be extinguished at any time. Seeing this scene, Lin Li knew he could not delay any longer, as the seal array would be disabled if it completely stopped functioning. If that happened, repairing would be the same as resetting the seal. With Lin Li's current ability, if he was given a year and a half to rebuild a similar seal, it would not be impossible to create a similar one. However, the dragon corpse would have probably gone somewhere by then. At the thought of this, Lin Li hurriedly stepped into the crystal wall and placed Angelano beside the massive seal array to begin repairing the incredibly complicated seal array. However, when Lin Li took a clear look at the composition of the entire seal array, he inhaled sharply in shock. Although he had long guessed that the seal array would not be simple, the one in front of him now was still far beyond his expectations. The outermost part of the seal array was a level 12 master level alchemy array, which might not seem much to Lin Li, a master of alchemy. However, the 12 alchemy arrays seemed to have been put together perfectly by a machine. It was just like the Mageth array of the Field of Inscription. From this point, it was clear that the person who set up the seal array was probably close to the guru level, if he wasn't already at it. However, there were obvious signs of damage on the 12 alchemy arrays at this time as each of them flickered, while the mana of the mana circuits flowed extremely slowly. In fact, there were even blockages in some areas that caused the 12 alchemy arrays to operate vaguely while their connection was gradually broken. Seeing this situation, Lin Li was secretly thankful that he had brought Angelano along. Otherwise, it would probably take him a long time to repair the 12 alchemy arrays alone. Although it wouldn't be difficult for Lin Li to repair the 12 alchemy arrays alone, the seal array did not contain only those 12 alchemy arrays, and he still had to repair the core of the array. I'll leave these 12 alchemy arrays to you. You must repair them in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, I reckon you can guess what the consequences will be. At this point, Lin Li could not be bothered to say anything more to Angelano, and instead handed the task straight to him. He believed that Angelano, who was afraid of death, would definitely not dare to be sly and pull some sneaky tricks. Indeed, Angelano dared not slack off at this moment, even though he looked extremely displeased. He scurried towards the alchemy arrays immediately. The eagle-eyed goblin could naturally tell what was extraordinary about the alchemy arrays, and knew that he had to race against time to repair them even with his current ability. Compared to Angelano's job, Lin Li's task was more taxing. He had to repair the core of the seal array, which were 4 guru-level Mageth arrays that contained the power of earth, fire, water, and wind, respectively. Besides, they were all the purest origin power of the world. The force and tremor that the 4 of them formed could be considered earth-shattering. It had been several years since Lin Li arrived in Anral, and he also had a rich and extraordinary experience in adventures. However, it was really the first time he had ever seen a guru-level Mageth array like this one. Even with his attainment in Mageths, he could not help but marvel at the ingenious design of the 4 Mageth arrays. Through the connection between the Mageth arrays, the 4 origin powers formed a perfect balance in the elemental world, and in fact, even ordinary peak sanctuary realm powerhouses could not do so. No wonder it could seal such a strong dragon corpse for so many years. Of course, at this moment, the 4 guru-level Mageth arrays had already lost the domineering aura that they originally had. They looked just like weak old men who were surviving on the staccato flow of mana. The faint power that Lin Li had previously detected was condensed by the origin power of the 4 Mageth arrays. He could tell how weak they were based on that. It was likely that they might collapse at almost any time. Lin Li glanced at the 4 Mageth arrays, quickly analyzed the situation, and sorted out the issues that he had to repair and resolve according to their priorities. After a while, he hurriedly started repairing as he didn't dare to delay any longer. The first thing Lin Li wanted to do was to stabilize the 4 Mageth arrays. As long as they didn't suddenly collapse during the repair, he wouldn't care about how much power they could exert. The basis for the operation of the Mageth arrays was the constant flow of mana in the mana circuit. Once the supply of mana was completely interrupted, the Mageth array would lose all their power. Generally speaking, even if the Mageth arrays did not have the mana to maintain the operation, they still wouldn't collapse. However, the 4 Mageth arrays were severely damaged now, and they were relying on the intermittent flow of mana to exist. If the flow of mana was interrupted again this time, the entire Mageth array would probably collapse. Hence, the first thing that Lin Li had to do was to clear the obstruction in the mana circuit so that the Mageth array could maintain its current state, and not continue to deteriorate. Thus, he would have more time to repair the various other problems in the Mageth array. Otherwise, if only one Mageth array was repaired while the other 3 collapsed, the seal still wouldn't work. Of course, Lin Li did not want to unblock all the mana circuits, as doing so immediately would be no different from directly repairing the entire Mageth array. What Lin Li needed now was to sustain the Mageth arrays in their current state. Hence, the first thing to unblock was the foundation mana circuit of the 4 Mageth arrays. However, The mana circuit was not a sewer, and could not be activated just by poking it with a rod. There were many things that had to be considered too. Lin Li also had to unblock the mana circuits, according to the degree of damage to the mage rays. At the same time, he also had to control the amount of mana influx to prevent it from malfunctioning and destroying the weak mage ray. It would be like a weak person getting a huge amount of nourishment all of a sudden, which might even kill him. Hence, even though it was just a mana circuit, it still required great skill and abilities to handle. Lin Li would have to have a very comprehensive grasp of mage rays and formulate a comprehensive plan for the mage rays. To Lin Li, skill was not a problem. The problem lay with time. It was a true race against time, and he could not make any slip-ups. In order to save every second of time, Lin Li released his space robe, while his body flashed continuously in the massive mage ray, and almost the entire mage ray was covered with his aftermages. He was moving extremely quickly, but his hands were moving faster as he continuously took out all sorts of magic materials and placed them in the damaged and broken mage rays to repair the latter. Fortunately, Lin Li was already a powerhouse that was at the peak of the sanctuary realm. Besides, under Garesco's guidance, he had gained a very deep understanding of the world's origin power. Otherwise, it would take him more time to calculate even if he had a master-level attainment in the field of mage rays. Now, with his profound understanding and mastery of the world's origin power, Lin Li managed to complete the steps almost without extra thought. However, despite his speed, Lin Li couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat when he completed the last step of clearing the mana circuit. The first step of the repair was about to be completed, but when Lin Li hurried to the mana circuit of the last mage ray that had to be cleared, he realized that the mageth had already become dull. The mageth was not to be underestimated, as its ingenious design was created by a guru of inscription, and its structure was complex. It was definitely the pinnacle of inscription. Any slight mishap might cause the collapse of the entire mageth array, let alone a stoppage. At this moment, there was a tinge of frustration in Lin Li's heart as he felt that all his previous efforts had gone to waste. The stoppage of the mageth array could not be fixed with just the clearing of the blockage in the mana circuit. In order to make it start running again, the other parts of the mana would have to be considered. In fact, it was no different from building a new mageth array. However, the frustration in his heart lasted only for a brief moment. He was not the type to give up easily in the first place. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come through in several desperate situations. Soon, he got a grip on his emotions and carefully began observing the mageth whose state seemed hopeless. After taking a glance, Lin Li discovered that although the mana in the mageth had already stopped flowing and had stagnated, there was still a force in the mana circuit that was subtly preventing the mageth from collapsing. It was a strange force that did not belong to the category of mana, but vaguely resembled the godly power of the Dragon of Destruction. However, the current situation did not allow Lin Li to consider much. Since the Dragon of Destruction had been sealed there, it didn't seem unfathomable that the mana circuit was tainted with a tinge of godly power. However, it was too weak at the end of the day. It would only allow the mageth not to collapse right away. Perhaps it would completely collapse a few seconds later. After making that judgment, Lin Li dared not delay any longer, and he simply waved his hands to form some clouds. All sorts of magic materials were accurately added to the mageth. With his movements, a faint trace of mana that was emitting a ray of light gradually began flowing slowly into the mageth along the circuit. Lin Li did not completely repair the mageth, and he simply let it maintain the basic operation so that it would not completely collapse. There were more crucial problems with the entire mageth array. Lin Li only dared to let the mageth array begin to operate fully and exert its full power when the entire mageth array was repaired completely. Otherwise, it would allow the dragon corpse's resistance to completely destroy the mageth array. With Lin Li's efforts, the 4 guru level mageth array finally showed a tinge of vitality. Although it did not exert any amazing power, it could at least cease operation in a short period of time. At this point, Lin Li could finally rest assured and repair the various functional problems in the mageth array. Of course, that did not mean that there would be enough time for him to waste. After all, there was still a big battle going on outside in the sky above Cage Island. Even though the Sky Castle had injured the dragon corpse, Elder Zoomer and the others still couldn't contend with it. At this moment, apart from Elder Zoomer and the others, Connorus, Ufalusi, and Norfaler who had come out from the Sky Castle were also fighting with the dragon corpse in the air above Cage Island. Although the 3 of them hadn't stepped into the sanctuary realm yet, and could not even be considered pseudo-sanctuary masters, they were not inferior to the pseudo-sanctuary powerhouses in terms of combat power. Connorus had the perfect body once belonging to Osric. Lin Li had also repaired the flaws in his body, and the power of the body alone was enough for him to contend with the ancient dragon. Otherwise, Connorus would not be able to contend with it alone. The dragon corpse was the corpse of the dragon of destruction, and contained a wisp of godly power. As he was a peak legendary level lich, Ufalus's mastery of necromagic had also reached an extreme. Although the dragon corpse would not be harmed by necromagic due to the power of the god in its body, the necromagic that Ufalusi cast would have a considerable impact on dragon corpses. For example, it would result in effects like retardation and a loss of balance due to the death curses. As long as the dragon corpse was slightly affected, there would be a huge impact on the battle situation. Of course, Elder Zoomer and the others were astonished by the incredible combat power displayed by the three who descended from the Sky Castle. If the three of them were to become sanctuary powerhouses, the Tower of Dusk would immediately catch up with the Supreme Council, and the Brilliant Shrine to become a super force that ruled over the entire world. In particular, Elder Zoomer had originally thought that it was amazing for the Tower of Dusk to be helmed by a young sanctuary powerhouse. However, there were now 3 peak legendary powerhouses, whose combat power was not inferior to that of beginners of the sanctuary realm. The shock he felt was imaginable. The young president of the Tower of Dusk, who was a high-level sanctuary powerhouse, had subordinates on par with the beginners of the sanctuary realm in terms of combat power. How did the small Tower of Dusk have such terrifying power? After thinking about the power of the Tower of Dusk, Elder Zoomer could not help but shudder. Although Elder Zoomer believed that the power of the Illuminati and the Gilded Kingdom was definitely stronger than the Tower of Dusk's, they would certainly suffer if they really had a huge conflict. At this point, he had complex emotions, and while hoping that the Tower of Dusk would be strong enough to get them out of the predicament, he also didn't want to see the Tower of Dusk display any greater power. However, Elder Zoomer was soon snapped out of his mood for thinking about those issues because he suddenly discovered that the wounds on the dragon corpse, which had been inflicted by the Sky Castle, were slowly recovering. It probably wouldn't take long for the dragon corpse to become as strong as it used to be previously. It was definitely not good news. The dragon corpse was a corpse of the dragon of destruction, and contained a wisp of godly power. Rapid recovery was only one of its trivial abilities. As for the wound on the chest of the dragon corpse, it still hadn't healed, because the wound was caused by the debris of the stars. Although the Sky Castle's attack was strong, it did not have the unique characteristics of the debris of the stars, and launched pure mana attacks. Hence, they couldn't stop the recovery of the dragon corpse's wounds. In the beginning, Elder Zoomer did not tell this matter to the others, because he didn't want them to be distracted. However, they were not blind, and they naturally saw the problem when the healing became more obvious. They were flustered. Although 3 legendary powerhouses whose combat power was akin to the early stage of the sanctuary realm had joined them, they were missing a high-level sanctuary powerhouse to help them. Once the dragon corpse healed, it would be over for them. So, if I got it right, it's safe to turn off. Ufalusi casts several curses that would cause one's wounds to decompose, but the immunity of the dragon corpse was too high, and Ufalusa's curses were restrained by the power of the gods the corpse possessed. Hence, there was naturally no effect at all. Norfaler focused on the dragon corpse's wound in his attacks. After all, the wound was on its back, so it could not be easily protected, unlike the wound on its chest. However, Norfaler was far weaker than the dragon corpse, and the retribution dagger could not even expand the wound by a millimeter after stabbing into the dragon corpse's wound. Connorus was the strongest of the 3, but only because he had the perfect body that allowed him to act as a shield for everyone. The fact that he could resist the dragon corpse's attacks did not mean that he could counterattack. As the dragon corpse's wounds healed automatically, the situation on Cage Island became much tenser, and they had no choice but to pin their hopes on Lin Li. At this moment, Lin Li, who was still repairing the mage on the bottom of the sea, also felt pressed for time. The immense power of the dragon corpse had seeped into every inch of space here, and Lin Li used the Sky Castle to strike the dragon corpse with all its might for the sake of getting to the bottom of the sea. However, he could now clearly feel that the power of the dragon corpse in the surrounding space was gradually increasing, and thus he immediately guessed that the dragon corpse's injuries were rapidly recovering. If the dragon corpse's power was restored to its original level, it would definitely put the people outside in an even more dangerous situation. But it was a huge disaster for Lin Li, who was at the bottom of the sea. When the surrounding space was once again filled with the power of the dragon corpse, it would again become a space that was like a domain world of the dragon corpse. It would still be dangerous for Lin Li, even though he was a high-level sanctuary powerhouse. Based on the rate of increase of the dragon corpse's power around him, Lin Li could already estimate just how pathetic the amount of time he had left was. It was really going to be a race against time. Lin Li glanced at the Magatha that he had to repair. Repairing 4 guru-level Magatha in such a short period of time was the toughest task that he had encountered since arriving in Anral. Sensing how pressed for time he was, Lin Li couldn't help but speed up, but he had to repair guru-level Magatha after all. While focusing on speed, it was more important not to make mistakes. A slight mistake was all it would take to make his previous efforts go in vain. That was something that Lin Li definitely could not afford. The people on the battlefield above Cage Island were already fighting for their lives, and so was Lin Li. The light on his space robe was flickering continuously, while the figures, aftermages, in the huge Magatha array were continuously flashing and changing position. Besides, each figure was also doing a different action, and they seemed like his clones. Even though Lin Li was a high-level sanctuary powerhouse, such frequent use of the power of space and the fast operation of the mana in his body had already caused his mana to be on the brink of overconsumption. Of course, he managed to achieve astonishing results from that. The Magatha ray, which was originally dim, gradually began shining with the light of mana, which had a range that was also expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, with the process of the repair of the Magatha ray, the speed gradually slowed down too. When Lin Li repaired the Magatha ray previously, he merely considered the issue of the mana circuit and the damaged magic materials. However, later on, Lin Li had to consider it comprehensively as a whole, and not an individual Magatha ray. After all, he had to restore the power of the seal, and thus he had to consider the connection between the 4 Magatha rays. Otherwise, he would only be repairing the 4 Magatha rays, and not the real seal. Although the seal had not been arranged by the Immortal King, the seal formed by 4 guru-level Magatha rays had probably been created by someone at the pinnacle of the guru level. When he was repairing the Magatha ray previously, Lin Li kept using all sorts of magic materials in his hands, and it seemed as casual as throwing garbage. However, when Lin Li laid down the magic materials now, he would often pause for a few moments, looking extremely careful. At this juncture, more than half of the wounds of the dragon corpse in the battlefield above Cage Island had obviously recovered. In the situation where a high-level sanctuary powerhouse was absent, Elder Zoomer and the others soon became extremely passive, and they seemed even more disheveled than before. Damn it, what the hell is that Fulik doing? Why hasn't anything changed yet? Elder Zoomer thought to himself. After having borne most of the pressure, Elder Zoomer was no longer like a dignified sanctuary powerhouse, and instead looked like an ordinary old man who was being beaten up by a burly man. He was filled with indescribable misery. The expensive robe on Elder Zoomer's body had already become tattered like beggar's clothing at this point, and was just like loose pieces of fabric, some of which had shown traces of corrosion. Thanks to the robe, Elder Zoomer could escape death several times. However, his precious robe had been completely ruined. As for the others, their predicament was in fact not much better than Elder Zoomer's. Even though they had to bear much less pressure, they were not experts to begin with. It was already quite difficult for them to survive until now. However, as the power of the dragon corpse gradually recovered, they felt like their death was approaching. They might just fall in a moment. The situation of the battle had already reached a critical point. Lin Li, who was at the bottom of the sea, suddenly stopped frowning while speeding up in his actions. After a round of numerous calculations, Lin Li finally sorted out his thought process, and he immediately began repairing the Magatha ray smoothly without pausing. With Lin Li's movements, the 4 Magatha rays were also gradually restored, and the 4 types of origin power also gradually began coalescing in the Magatha ray. The wisp of power that bound the dragon corpse was originally fickle, but it now seemed to have gained a new lease on life with the reinfusion of the 4 types of origin power. It seemed to have gradually become stable before growing again. The dragon corpse in the sky was becoming increasingly violent, as if it had sensed the binding force getting stronger. However, Elder Zoomer and the others were the only ones bearing everything. During the previous battle, everyone including Elder Zoomer had suffered injuries of varying extent. Hence, the situation was naturally more and more dangerous. The entire sky was filled with the violent power of the dragon corpse as the space was shattered under its ferocious attacks. Even the sky castle, that was floating steadily above the battlefield, seemed to be shaking continuously in the violent power fluctuations. At this juncture, Elder Zoomer really hoped that the sky castle could inflict more damage to the dragon corpse. However, he knew clearly that he could only dream about it. Putting aside the fact that it would require a large number of legendary magical crystals, an attack of a similar power might not be able to injure the dragon corpse either. Lin Li could not see the situation of the battlefield in the sky, but he could imagine that even though the dragon corpse had no soul, being free from restraint was probably an instinctive urge of most living beings. Even a dog would not let others put a leash on it easily, let alone the corpse of the dragon of destruction. Otherwise, the dragon corpse would not have broken free from the seal and got out. What would be the outcome of the dragon corpse, which was originally extremely powerful, combining with the frenzy of breaking free from shackles? However, Lin Li could not be bothered to pay attention to what was going on outside. If he couldn't repair the seal completely, being able to leave now would be of no help at all at this juncture. Even if he would cause some casualties now, he had no other option. However, the situation also made Lin Li move faster. After all, if they couldn't hold the dragon corpse back, it would definitely come for him. At this point, Lin Li had also broken out in a sweat, and although he was just repairing a seal, the effort he put into this was probably far greater than when he'd fought with Osric. In particular, he had expended more mental energy than the physical. Anyone else in his place would probably be thoroughly mentally exhausted. However, when Lin Li was about to completely repair the seal, he suddenly saw something unusual from it. Through the repair of the seal, Lin Li had gained a clear grasp of the entire structure and design of the seal. However, that was also the reason that something that should not have been in the seal was cleverly embedded in it. Flick, why aren't you done yet? I've already repaired the alchemy array. It's so exhausting, said Angelano, who had already repaired the 12 alchemy arrays and was sitting on the ground. He was speaking to Lin Li triumphantly. Angelano did not have the ability to move like Lin Li. When he was repairing the 12 alchemy arrays, he relied entirely on his legs to run around. Actually, the repair of the alchemy array was not considered much. Instead, running back and forth was more tiring for him. However, Lin Li did not respond to Angelano, and instead decided to use the precious time to study the strange thing that he had discovered in the seal array. Although he was only one step away from completely repairing the seal, Lin Li knew that once the spell was repaired, he would have to leave the place immediately because of his current level of power. By then, he would have no opportunity to study these things again. With Lin Li's attainment and inscriptions, he had to take his hats off to the person who created such a clever design for the seal array. It was not that it was too advanced, but rather that the thought process involved was incredible. In fact, it was even more amazing than the combination of conquering Magaths and psychic arrays in the Sky Castle. It seemed that the ancestor, one of the Gilded Kingdom, had left behind an infinite amount of wealth for his descendants. From the clues on the seal array, Lin Li managed to figure something out. At the same time, he was also amazed that the immortal king, Osric, and Garesco were not the only amazing talents in the history of Anril. The fact that the ancestor of the Gilded Kingdom was able to seal the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction, and even make such an arrangement, showed that he was probably more talented than the 3 arbitrators. The entire seal array was indeed designed to seal the powerful dragon corpse, but the array that was hidden well, and was discovered by Lin Li, could seal the dragon corpse while continuously drawing power from the latter. It was the corpse of the Dragon of Destruction, and even if it was dead, and without the soul and magical crystal, the power it had was definitely massive beyond imagination. The Mageth that contained a wisp of godly power, which Lin Li had discovered previously, was actually the array that extracted the power of the dragon corpse, and overlapped with the seal array. As for the ancestor of the Gilded Kingdom, Lin Li could more or less guess what he had extracted the power of the dragon corpse for. If all the power of the dragon corpse was extracted and infused into a person's body, it would probably immediately create a sanctuary powerhouse that had a wisp of godly power. Actually, the power of the peak of the sanctuary realm was nothing, and the key was still the wisp of godly power, which was the gateway to becoming a god. As long as a sanctuary powerhouse had a wisp of godly power, they would be able to comprehend the mysteries of the sanctuary realm and be a step away from the realm of gods. Of course, Lin Li wouldn't leave such a good thing to the people of the Gilded Kingdom. He had taken a great risk to help them this time, after all, and asking them for something in return wasn't too much to ask for. However, it was still too early to extract that power. Although the array had already extracted a huge amount of power from the dragon corpse after so many years of operation, the real key to the power of the gods was still in the dragon corpse's body. The godly power would probably be extracted only when all the power of the dragon corpse was depleted. As a guru of inscription, Lin Li naturally had a way to deal with it. He had merely tampered with the array and left a minor setting that was similar to a backdoor. Those who were below the guru level probably would not be able to tell. The entire seal array and the array that extracted the power of the dragon corpse was in Lin Li's control thanks to the backdoor. Flick, what are you getting up to? If you still don't repair the seal, we're going to die here. Within a brief period of less than 20 seconds, the smugness on Angelano's face had long disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by horror. It was previously unclear, but it seems like it might be one ancestor, not multiple ones, or only one among them has such skills.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.